related transactions. So
That's what I
we
mean.
can
Yeah.
trade maybe the
I
Bitcoin
think
over some authorized channels, but you
honestly,
will
I
not be
think
able
we
to
should
spend
just
them, you know.
honestly, I think we should just cut ties with them.
With Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you say that, Robert?
Who said that?
That was Robert. Why do you say that, Robert?
Well, so first it's I'm Armenian, so I actually like
Robert, you have
Ah.
to speak louder,
Yeah, a
Robert.
little bit
Yeah, I
louder.
can't hear it.
Ground control.
Yeah.
You
Are
still
you?
there, Robert?
Come on in, Robert.
Robert, you want to talk up a little bit, buddy?
oh
Don't mention the
Yeah, just a
major.
little louder. We
oh
can't
I
hear
was
you.
muted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
What?
I was saying we should basically just cut ties because number one, I just don't support their country because of the issue that occurred with Armenians.
Yes. Well, did you hear a few days
And
ago that President Joe Biden formally recognized the Armenian genocide? Did you hear that news a few days ago?
I did.
And what's your take on that?
I thought it was amazing, and honestly, I think it should, um, keep going. Like we should, like, develop from that. Build from that
Okay.
versus just leaving it at that. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
it's amazing. It's a step up.
Like we should go out for lunch together with
Like,
Turkey and Armenia, or what do you mean?
Bob?
That would be a
no,
nice
just like
icebreaker.
kind of like,
Ice cream. We can go have an ice cream sundae on the weekend. Go
yikes,
do some ice skating or
yikes. That's
Turkish
gonna be
ice
a
yeah,
cream.
little ice cream and ice skating. That always works. Little kissy. Little
Okay, so maybe Microsoft divorce was a more hot topic, huh?
yes.
Let's go back to that.
Let's go back to that. On the Bill Gates divorce, has there been any updates at all on that? That we're not really watching that one too quickly. Not being we do a lot of.
everyone's been talking about.
What's up, Robert?
This last couple of days, I don't know if it's been with you guys either.
Yeah.
I've seen Clubhouse
Yeah.
just filled with only Bill Gates
Yeah.
like meetings.
Yes. Rooms.
Yeah, the rooms, yeah.
That's right. Kai, go ahead.
No, sorry. Okay. Should we create a diversion then?
Yes. Okay.
Please,
Have,
Kai, I'm right there
have we
with you.
discussed the have we discussed the new kind of like a 2 nanometer chip that allegedly is a new breakthrough announced by IBM?
Hold on a second. That sounds a little too good to be true.
This
IBM
is
is making breakthroughs.
Can
IBM
I can
says
I
it has made
chuck?
a significant breakthrough in computer processors by creating a 2 nanometer chip in its test lab. So of course this means immense amount of saving in terms of energy and increase in performance. And so it's going to be ultimately good for mobile phone battery life, as well as making possibility to a lot of super light and super powerful AR and XR devices of the future. So I think this during the time of the chip war, no, that's quite a welcoming news.
Yeah. Who is
Kai,
it? Is it TSMC
sorry.
that's claiming that? Who's claiming 2 nanometer?
It's IBM.
Wow.
So there is a health warning here, though. When I last looked into this from the standpoint of what's from a physics point of view, is the minimum.
TSMC, yeah,
It must be
TSMC.
because TSMC has the world record at the moment of like 3 or 4, really, but maybe 3. I had not heard of 2. So
Yeah,
go ahead,
just
Ben.
be aware there is no standard. There's no standard way of measuring that feature size on the gates. Every company decides a slightly different way. When I last looked
Right.
at this from the standpoint of what is the absolute physical minimum from a quantum tunneling threshold point, there was no like this is how we measure a feature size. So there's a little bit. You need to look a level deeper because there's a little bit of I call it dick wagging, for want of a better word, going on, trying to say I'm smaller than. It's kind of inverted. My gate's smaller than yours, but it's a little bit. You've got to be very careful as to how they're actually measuring that, because it's not kind of obvious on a if you look on a microscope of the gate which dimension they're choosing.
So not all nanometers are measured equally, is what you're saying.
No. All nanometers are absolutely measured equal. That's not the point. The point is that what from where to where
What exactly they're measuring? Yes.
On a gate, under an electron microscope, from where to where are you measuring that feature size?
Right.
And as the gate designs change, they're just picking different. It's not just completely obvious and standardized as to what a gate size is.
Got it.
So that's just a health warning there, because it's super easy to cook the numbers and do a politician's gate size.
Good point.
Let's also not forget that TSMC, they expect their 3 nanometer node, to be online for mass production towards the end of this year, actually before their 4 nanometer node, which is incredible. I mean, the 4 nanometer, I think, ran into some teething problems, but they learned from that. And so I would like to know, I saw this article, I'd like to know when IBM can deliver a mass manufacturing capability.
It's not being discussed because it's in the test lab. And if you PTR, I got a picture of the transistors on the IBM nanosheets used just to make it look more convincing. But it is test lab. But nevertheless, in these miserable days, I think that's quite encouraging news for tech.
It's just amazing how the gates just keep getting smaller and smaller. But we are right on the cusp of hitting what is absolutely a limit in terms of tunneling. Tunneling is the limit that you hit where there's just a quantum. There is just a probability of finding the electron the other side of a gate, just straight up because of the dimensions involved. So that's pretty cool.
Alrighty.
Quick question: is that a buy on IBM?
No, it was TSMC.
Sorry, IBM. I made a mistake.
IBM.
It's IBM.
It's IBM, not TSMC.
Okay.
IBM
TSMC is a competitor. Yeah.
Is that a buy on the stock?
No, we're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
This is it.
Don't forget to notify us.
I can see the level of excitement in this room. Obviously,
Please don't forget to notify when the time comes.
We're still a buy on Papa John's, though, if it's good pizza.
You're very sweet. Thank you for that.
I'm still long on.
Papa John's is doing quite well, by the way. It's not for me to say because of obviously our American colleagues they have a say in there, but they are doing quite good.
But when we meet physically, you're providing the pizza, so that's going to be good.
We can do it. We can do it because of thanks to our global presence. Wherever you are, just let me know.
That's good.
Great.
I didn't hear the applause from Tyler, which I love. He does it sometimes on and off.
Oh, you mean the ding?
Yeah, the ding.
No, you
Did
should
we get
the applause.
Hold
the
on.
applause. The applause. Yeah, I want the applause. No, the applause.
Oh, I have a new applause, by the way. Here it is.
For
No, 1 second. Sorry, yes. I messed up. Here it is.
Here you go.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
for the free pizza for all of us for a whole year.
Exactly.
Anywhere we want
That's for the pizza.
Oh,
by the way, speaking of this, whatever happened to our friend who lost the 1 Bitcoin bet?
Yep.
Rico Nakamoto. Where is
Rico? Into the bitverse.
Ran away.
Somebody ping him.
Yeah, I'm gonna ping him right now.
Maybe Ben knows him. Does Ben know him?
I'm gonna start pinging.
Who are we looking for? Sorry,
Rico Nakamoto.
Rico, RICO.
RICO.
RICO. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, what was the bet again?
He bet Kieran the price of the price of Bitcoin. He said Bitcoin would not go below 53,000, and if it did, he was going to donate a Bitcoin to our Tech News Club. And then on the other side, Kieran said it wasn't going to go above. It was like 64,000.
67.
Yeah, it got very close. Kieran almost lost, but he ended up winning the bet. Yeah.
But Rico ran away.
They both bet a Bitcoin. Yeah. And Rico's not been seen from since losing the bet.
So Ben, you have a mission now. Please help us get him.
We got to find that guy. Here. We got a hot Bitcoin on the loose.
Absolutely. I shall keep an eye out with my funny laser eyes. I think in order to ping him, he's got to follow me, right? So I've got to hunt him down on Clubhouse, and then I've got to woo him to follow me somehow. I'll woo him with my eyes. I think
you got to do what it takes, man.
Oh yeah, just tell him we got this really hot Bitcoin room. You got to get in on here on this Doge. We got a Dogecoin conversation. You got to get in on, and then we'll get him in the dark corner here in the in Clubhouse, and we'll get Mo and Sonali and we'll let him.
Yeah, I'll drag him in. You guys can beat him up.
Now we have Papa Joe's Pizza and some
take one for the team, Ben.
We're gonna have to bait and switch him for you. We'll get him in on the basis of some hot new coin, and then you guys
Dogecoin. Yes.
About that one Bitcoin.
Clouds.
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh, that. And by the way, for those who missed our last meeting in the previous time zone, there was an absolutely hysterically funny moment. There was an older gentleman from Texas, Pete, Texas Pete, charming old fellow, and he's going on and on about whippersnappers and these kids with their, crazy devices and yada yada. And his grandsons are, his sons are 35, and they're all end up in this Clubhouse game. And then he says, next thing, goes, now, they got him trying all this new stuff, and he's trying out buying this new new Bitcoin thing.
It's clouds.
Yeah, BitClout. It was so funny, though. It's like hearing an old Texas grandpa.
BitClout is the first thing I bought with my Bitcoin on purpose, $50.
Oh dear.
No. I knew it's a scam. It's absolutely obvious because for a start, you can't get the money off the BitClout platform.
Right.
And I bought it for a weird personal psychological hack, which is I wanted to be taken into a scam as the very first thing I did, to just keep a little bit of skin in the game to remind me of, of the reality of that.
Ben, since we have several
I'm not
Bitcoin
gonna lie.
rooms, can you start us off with a non-Bitcoin headline? How's that?
Can I start us off with a non-Bitcoin? Whoa,
yeah. Can you actually do that?
That's like.
Can I say one thing on BitClout? Though?
So yes, I can. But yeah, let's let him go first, and then I'll come back with a non-Bitcoin headline for sure.
A lovely trading game. Like if you like trading games or any type of sort of financial games, BitClout is actually really fun. That's what I've been doing on it.
I agree. I concur. It's a lot of fun. Can't take it easy.
So yeah. I've got an economic but non-Bitcoin headline, which is I'll tweet it out, but it's alarming. I'm just trying to work out how much quantitative easing the UK government has done, and I found a wonderful scam, basically a scam on our central bank's website. And I'll send you, I'll tweet out the link right now. There's an article on quantitative easing. It shows you how much has been done over time. Shows you this lovely stable-looking bar chart going up over time, as if they're doing quantitative easing in a very controlled way. And then if you hover over the bars on the x-axis and actually look at the scale, you've got most of the bars are 2 to 4 years apart, and then the last 3 bars. So the first 3 bars are 2 to 4 years apart. The last 3 bars are we're just months apart. I'll PTR it now so you can understand what I'm talking about, and then I'll back it up with a proper link to the article. It's just a joke. So you really got to be careful with things like non-zero based scales. Politicians love doing that. Look how much this has gone up. It's gone up from 1001 to 1003, and they make it look like a dramatic climb. But this is worse. This is now messing up a bar chart in a way that you really shouldn't be allowed to do. And this is our central bank. So take a look. I PTR'd the bar chart, and then right now that's available. So the left-hand 3 bars have a gap between them, typically of 2 to 4 years, for the amount of money that they put into our economy in that period.
You sort of couldn't do it, could you? That's still a bit.
And then
therefore, it's printed money. It's rubbish, and we should go to Bitcoin.
And the right-hand 3 are months apart. It's just a scam. So yeah, I'm going to tweet that out now, and with just a WTF, I think. So that's my headline.
What? It might turn out that Bitcoin as a meme is an actual sort of virus, Cal, to your point, which is once
you just can't get rid of it.
Once you buy Bitcoin, all things become Bitcoin, and it'll be in the DSM 4, 5, 6 updated edition. And it's a social psychophenomena that once you buy Bitcoin, you become part of a crypto cult of some kind. And it has.
Well, I think it's obvious because you've seen through Bitcoin glasses too, right?
I mean, we're saying this in jest, but it is really interesting. Like Cal was like, and we love Ben. Ben's super smart, and it was just it's like it's hard. When people get into Bitcoin, it's like veganism, like CrossFit training, and this joke's been made countless times.
Ben's been taken.
Yeah.
So Tyler, on the QE, the quantitative easing part, so the worrying here is that, I think the next couple of years, we could be in a situation where the banks will turn down deposit. Just think about that.
Yeah.
because if you look at the top three banks, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, I think they hold about 6 trillion worth of deposits versus the 3 trillion loan out there. So it's just there's too much money flooding into the just because of this QE, right? The globally, if you look at there's about almost 80% of the GDP, global, it's been printed in there. So there's abundance of cash out there. I think that's why if you noticed recently, Yellen, I think a few days ago, said the rates has to go quicker, right? So they will be, they are fighting against that already. But yes, there is a phenomenal cash that we can end up in a situation where that banks will be turning down taking deposits. Then that money has to go somewhere, right?
Right. So Kieran, I'm glad you jumped up here because maybe you heard we were just talking about you with the Bitcoin bet that you had with Rico Nakamoto, which you won, thankfully.
Have you found him yet?
No, there's now an official manhunt out for this shady character, formerly known as Rico Nakamoto, to cough up his Bitcoin to our Tech News Fund.
Yeah, because we promised some Cambodian village a library, right?
That's exactly right. So on this point, though, given that you had sort of the foresight that led to you winning this bet, what is your foresight now? Now that Bitcoin's kind of in an interesting moment, where do you see it going from here? And maybe you can relate it to Ben's insight around the quantitative easing and whatnot.
So let me tell you. So what it is that. So I totally agree. I think. So let me give you a little bit of backdrop. So today I went to a cafe around, where I always go, which is a Pret. It's a big chain, around UK. And I always talk to the barista, but first time in 4 years. And he said, "Oh, I bought some Ethereum." And I say, "Wow!"
And that's the beginning of the end, right there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can tell from his face that there was a lot of excitement, but he doesn't know anything about it. And there is this famous saying in Wall Street is that when you see a headline on Times or a big magazine, that's the time, that's the top. That's where you sell.
Yeah.
Right. I just get the feeling that what's happening. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just agreeing in my British way, saying here.
Yeah.
So I just get the feeling that what's happening is, look, I think no one is doubting Bitcoin, no one is doubting, blockchain. What it is even after 10 years, blockchain.
No. Plenty of people are doubting Bitcoin. Charles Munger very verbally so. Yeah.
No. I mean, look, Charles Munger is from the old school, right? So I think there's a famous saying. Look, one of the things that I love about Charles Munger and Warren Buffett is that they always stay within their circle of competence, right? So they they know their boundary and they know where the limit of their circle of competence.
Yeah.
And they never, in the last 70, 60 years, they never gone out of their circle. So when they say there is a merit to that, all he's saying is that tell me where I'm going to die, so I'm not going to go there. Right? That's their philosophy, when it comes to the investment thesis. So I totally agree what Charlie Munger is coming from. My point is that I think I believe in Bitcoin, but the price point is about between 15 to 18,000. We will see that shortly, and I can see many scenarios, and we can have conversations around that. That's not because I'm one of those haters. I love Bitcoin. I think I love what it stands for. For example, someone coming from a country like Sri Lanka, where we saw a civil war, state authority control, dictatorship, all of that stuff. I believe what Bitcoin blockchain stands for.
Yeah.
But I'm also worked in Wall Street. I know what the central banks collectively done globally, the amount of money in the systems. I know how they have drained in the past and how much power they have.
Yeah.
All of that stuff put together, I think short term we will see between 18,000 to 15,000. I strongly believe that. I'm happy to put somebody, even another Bitcoin for it. As long as somebody says 100,000 versus 18,000, I'm happy to take that bet as well.
Kieran, I want to. I've just
Can I chime in?
Yeah, just one real quick. I've just pinned a tweet, Kieran. My prognosis for the price of Bitcoin is much less certain than that. So it is that by Christmas, the price will be somewhere between $18,000 and $900,000. That's all I know.
No, Ben, I think Ben, I think, look, we need to be smarter than that, right? I think there's a lot of brain power in this room. So let's not go into that stupid argument of, it's between 18,000 and 900,000, right? So look,
hold on. Let me explain why. Just look on my pinned tweet. Okay, if you look at a log chart over the whole history, it's not actually obvious what it's going to do next. I totally agree with you. I think it's visiting the 20,000s. Whether it's doing that before or after it hits the 100,000 type of marks, who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd be doing leverage bets on this thing to the hilt, which I'm not doing because it doesn't make any sense to me. And the
So
other,
one of the things, Ben, one of the things you need to understand is this. Okay, Dogecoin. Let's just take a little. Let's put some context to people so they can.
Kieran, can I throw in before you continue, bro?
So look, just 1 second for us. Let me put this out there. So look, Dogecoin today, it's bigger than Moderna. They've given us the life-saving vaccine for us, and also the Coinbase, which is meant to be the one. So this is bigger than. It's something that started as a joke. Look, we need to understand what the short term. So we're talking about short term, right? So when you say short term, I know for sure it's not breaking 100,000, let alone 800,000. What I know is there's going to be a correction because market always find its price. I think short term. Bitcoin, in order for even for the sustainability on for the long term, the price to get that point, short term there'll be a washout and it will happen, and it's coming sooner than what people are
so
projecting.
can I do you with Bitcoin? I mean, so I have no clue whatsoever about Ethereum or any of the other coins because I haven't read their white papers. It's complicated enough to understand Bitcoin, but I do understand Bitcoin on a technical level. Are you aware of the 4-year halving cycle with Bitcoin and the miner
Absolutely.
rewards?
But all of that is priced in. Look, I mean, by
Yeah,
2100,
it is.
2150. So you're talking about another 130 odd years, for the 21 million. Look, we know all of that, right? Look, price. So the reason I told you about this Pret, the guy, he said he bought his Ethereum at 1800 and now he's 3400. So you can see the grin on his face, but he don't get it. The reason he's bought it is because somebody is hyped him up. He's saying, oh, I bought this
His
Dogecoin
simple
for.
greed, yeah.
Yeah, simple greed. So I think we've been in the market for, and also a lot of people when they talk about institutional money here and Bitcoin or the crypto as an asset class, what people don't understand is that before you bring something like this into an asset class, there has to be a certain level of flows, hedging. How do you hedge this thing? I mean, when you have, for example, when you look at a certain financial asset, we have these derivatives. So for example, corporates, if their corporates want to get involved, for example, let's think of Tesla as a corporate, right? If they want to get involved, how are they hedging this risk? You can't be long something without having a downside hedge. So in the normal in the normal hedging, well, let's say if it's a Porsche or a BMW, so they know what the break-even cost to make a single car. So what they do is they know what the future cash flows are, and what they do is they go and buy a derivative or an option in the financial world and to hedge their cost. So in case certain things goes down by a certain percentage, they have a certain hedge, right? So, and then what they do is they use this Black-Scholes, pricing tool in order to get what is a fair value of that value of the derivative. So, how can you have something like a Bitcoin that becomes an asset class, which moves about 10% a day? What kind of volatility you feed into a? So my point is that there are not tools.
Yeah, so by the very Black Scholes you just mentioned, any hedging instrument would cost a lot of money because the volatility
Absolutely.
factor would be very expensive. If you look at this as a long term, look, I'm not trying. I don't. There's not really any argument here. I'm saying I have not got a clue what the price of Bitcoin is going to do between now and Christmas. Within the bounds that I think it probably won't go much lower than 15, 20,000, and I don't think it's going to go more high. I agree with you. I think the distribution curve of probability is not even symmetric. I think it's more likely to go down to 20,000 than go up to 800.
So look,
But
let me ask you this. So
just uncertain.
forget Bitcoin. So Dogecoin, how can it can go to 200 billion? Why not?
It can do what it likes. It's a joke. It's
So
literally a joke. Yeah,
the point
it's
is
not
that
an asset class.
how does that reflect on the Bitcoin? If you think that Dogecoin can overtake, let's say Tesla, the way it's going, it can overtake Tesla.
It's effectively a Ponzi scheme, something like Dogecoin.
Exactly.
Right?
So my point is that the government worked so hard to print almost $15 trillion in order to save us from this kind of the biggest pandemic we ever experienced. They're not going to wait. They're not going to sit there watch this shit to just to take the carpet under us again. We can't go back to where we were last year, right?
So
No
what's
government.
your argument, Kieran? What do you
So my
thrusting
argument is that
towards? I'm just trying to understand.
my argument is that look, the government, they've been busy with the vaccinations, getting control of people's, making sure that the money ends up in people's hands. They've done all of that. Now people are realizing there are worries. Look, the central bank's mandate is to price stability, right? They have many tools in their arsenals which they will slowly deploy. When that deploys, people will realize.
Kieran, there's no argument. He changed his statement. He's not saying 18,000 to 900,000. He's agreeing with your statement now. Let's move on to the next headline, man.
Exactly.
So my point is, look,
let's move on. Let's move on, guys.
My point is the short term we see in the top. I think it's only downward from here. That's my point.
Well, maybe not. Look at the 4-year halving cycle. Your timing might be off, but I totally have no clue either. So yeah.
Okay.
Ben, let's leave it. Come on, let's move on.
To be determined. Time will tell. And we could do a big poll on the audience and see which one they think it's going to, but maybe we'll save that for tomorrow.
Let's do some headlines.
Let's do some headlines. Let's
move on.
Okay, welcome everybody. It's now the bottom. We're now 30 minutes in, so most folks are in the room now. And welcome to Tech News Around the World, where we argue about Bitcoin endlessly 24 hours a day. Actually, that's every other room in Clubhouse. So that's the first time we've actually spent more than 5 minutes arguing about Bitcoin, honestly. So, but it's interesting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor, interrupt your
Maria,
words.
not about Bitcoin.
No, about interrupting my verse, and I have been interrupting my internet. And behind these high and big in arguments, I want to, at first I want to sorry that my English is not very well. I just want to ask Mr. Taylor that would you please tell me that how could you, how do you increase or rise your followers to 14,000? Just a little bit pink or clue. Would you please say us?
So this is Azar.
I'm sorry, just changing the arguments and.
Okay, Azar. I'll tell you what. I would be but for those who are joining us, most people in this room join us every day. But for anyone who's new, I should put it this way. For the 95% of people who join us every day, you know that Azar is the new person on stage. Literally every other person on stage joins us very regularly, nearly every day. And Azar, this is your first time joining us, so you're quite unique on stage. And your question is quite unique as well. And I will very happily teach you how to get 14,000 followers for the very simple discounted price of 1 Bitcoin. You can go ahead and DM me in my Twitter account, and we will make sure to give you matter of fact, I will guarantee you get 14,000 followers for 1 Bitcoin.
So that could be 18,000 or 900,000, right? That's okay. Just
and this offer goes to anybody listening. I can promise you 14,000 Clubhouse followers for 1 Bitcoin. That's my promise to you. It's a satisfaction guaranteed, 100% satisfaction guarantee, money back discount.
That sounds like
right. Next headline.
Tyler,
yes.
if you allow me, I would like to add something to close on the Bitcoin and crypto.
No. We already did close on it.
No,
we don't want to go. We already closed it.
Right.
So we need another headline.
Right.
Cal, hold on.
It's the same topic, but I don't mean to argue on the pricing. Just want to say that the Central Bank of Egypt has come out very strongly today to warn consumers that they should not use cryptocurrencies, despite a survey that has been run by MasterCard in Egypt that says that about 50% of respondents to the survey intend to use some form of cryptocurrencies in the next year. Yeah. And the central bank is pushing strongly, warning consumers that it is not a safe.
Now, this is a good point, because Egypt, it was reported maybe by you or someone else in Egypt recently, about a week ago, that Egypt was trying to come up with a sort of their own cryptocurrency, state currency, to distract Egyptians from cashing out of their local currency. Right, because Egyptians want to get out of the local currency, so the government thought, oh, Jesus, how do we stop everyone from going into other currencies, and which would essentially have negative impacts on their own local currency. So the government thought, I know what we can do. We can make our own government-issued digital currency, because that will keep them. What they really want is a digital currency. They don't, and the honest answer is no. They don't want a digital currency pegged to your already, you're a fiat currency. They want to get out of your fiat currency is what they really want to get out of. So that's why this point that you're raising, Sarah, is actually very interesting, which is they've now realized, people don't want a Egyptian digital currency tied to the fiat currency. They want to get out. And so now they're kind of regulating such that people aren't allowed to get out. And this is where it gets very interesting on a global financial country by country level, to see what policies which countries are doing, and how each country's handling this revolution, this financial revolution, and every country is taking slightly different approaches, and we're watching it all very carefully. So thank you for the update on Egypt, but I feel a little concerned for Egyptians today. But that's probably, we did a poll one time, by the way, that's very relevant to this, which is when a government tells its citizens, you cannot do this, right? This is now banned. And by the way, India, we brought it up in the context of India because India was getting very strong against Bitcoin specifically, and said, in the next 6 months you must liquidate all of your kind of crypto holdings and you can't hold it anymore or whatever. And then so we did a poll of the audience and we said, when a government tells its people that they can't do something with related to cryptocurrencies, would that cause you to, make the price of it go up or down? And more people thought it would make the price go up than down, particularly in countries where they don't trust their governments. And I think this will hold true in Egypt. Now that Egypt has said you can't do this, I bet it makes Egyptians want it even more, because I think they understand what's going on internally. So it's a really interesting social, anthropological dynamic at play that often has counterintuitive side effects, but to be determined.
But they
Yeah,
can
Tyler,
do.
can I say that? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Egypt can do exactly what Turkey did, right?
Yeah, what did Turkey just do? They just banned it, like the gentleman said earlier in the program, right? Yeah. Yep,
The
that's
lady.
the lady.
The Turkish
Sorry,
lady.
yeah, sorry, but that's right. She's on here. Dugyu, thank you for that. And yeah, it's really interesting to
Tyler,
get updates.
just a point to be made. Just a point to be made. No matter who bans it, no matter which country bans it, no matter what anyone is trying to do, you can't ban this. This is going to continue.
Yeah,
So
for now, yeah.
whether someone creates a CBDC, whether someone creates a stable coin, no matter what, it doesn't. Bitcoin cannot get banned.
I
End of story.
know, for us, but if the government decide to criminalize it, the citizens can't do it
They'll
unless they
still
want
do
to.
it, sir.
Yeah, they'll
So
have a problem on their
for us,
hands if
they,
they
they
do.
They'll
can't
still
ban.
do it.
For us, they can't ban it. But if you look at the global emerging market debt in dollar denominated debt, it's about $16 trillion dollar denominated debt every year. So basically, the emerging market debt borrowed in US dollar that need to be serviced every year, right? That means the local countries need to have dollars, access to dollar. If a
Agreed,
country
mate.
if country thinks that people is going to be using crypto
Bring
or
the chin
Bitcoin
forward.
in order to get dollar to get out of the
Actually, bring
border,
the chin
there will
forward, lift
be
up the hips.
sorry who's
I got it.
so
It's okay. It's okay.
so that's another big play that people don't think. Look, already if you look at a lot of the emerging market countries, they're suffering. The travels restrictions, economy shrunk. If you look at
100%.
the FDIs
What?
in most of the countries are shrink almost 10-15% down compared to last year. So they're already struggling to get
Before
hold of
you keep
dollar.
going, let me tell you, I agree with everything that you're saying and everything that you're going to say. However, this is the entire reason arbitrage desks exist between countries for OTC crypto trading. So this is regardless of whether governments do it or not, regardless of whether governments allow it or not, Bitcoin trading
For
will
us,
continue,
regardless
and that's where
governments
arbitrage
control or
is made.
not, they are always going to be drug dealers selling cocaine, right? That's just the way it is.
Yep.
Bang on.
I
There you
think
go.
on the
Exactly.
same type of news, it would be interesting to see. Going back to Tyler's point, it would be interesting to see how African countries react towards the news that Visa has announced today. They're partnering with Tala, which is this glorified digital payday lender funded by Silicon Valley VCs and offering digital financial services in emerging markets, specifically in Africa. They've now announced today a partnership with Visa through which their subscribers will be able to access Bitcoin through the wallet. It'd be interesting to see how governments react to that news.
Indeed. It's going to be very interesting on a country by country basis for weeks and months to come. Yeah. And we get daily updates here, in large part thanks to the incredibly diverse audience here in Clubhouse that
Sorry, Tyler.
keeps us
This
updated. Yeah.
last comment that was made around drugs and people selling drugs, etc., etc. You think in the rest of the world where cryptocurrency trading was occurring before, regardless, forget the drug portion for a second. Think about cryptocurrency trading when there was no regulation around it. Was it allowed? Not allowed?
It was allowed, but who was it? Things that you need to agree here. Shop saga, right? There was a Wall Streeters got together. They showed the world they can 400%. No difference. There is a
No, but what I'm
community
saying
there.
is, even today, for example, there's countries. Let's say, take Pakistan, for example, which is trying to come up with regulation right now, right? They say that you're not allowed to do it in certain provinces, but people are still doing it. You think they're going to go after them with the same way they'd go after drug dealers? Of course not. It's not a fair comparison.
So what
Try and understand what I'm
Hey,
saying.
Faraz,
So
I would disagree in one point, because in Sweden, when P2P file networks were starting. For example, in Sweden, we had the Pirate Bay. And when the American record labels said, hey, that's our content, you can't do that, the American government told the Swedish government, hey, Swedish government, you need to crack down on that Pirate Bay. And they did. And they went after my friends, Peter. And Peter spent time in prison.
And
yeah, they
also
went
for
down
us,
off.
when I say that,
But you'll notice that torrents are still very much around and in use every day in a very
Yeah, and
sensible
that's an interesting point,
technology.
Ben.
The decentralized tech torrents
Correct.
are still very
Understood.
much here and used all the
Correct.
time.
But the founders did
I
spend
feel
time in
educated.
prison over it, but they did find a way to keep it existing. They had to distance themselves from it technologically, so they couldn't be tied or tracked back to the technology stack that's keeping it alive today. You're right. But it is interesting that it is still up and running against any government's interests. That's true.
So last point, and I'll just ask this question, and maybe someone can educate me. When all this Silk Road stuff happened in the United States, when Bitcoin was up and coming, everyone else who was just crypto trading or just Bitcoin trading, what happened to them?
The Silk Road founder, Ross, did get busted eventually.
The
It took a
Silk Road did, but everyone else who was trading Bitcoin, did anything happen to them?
but this is why Satoshi Nakamoto is anonymous, and that's why it's very important that he's anonymous, because Ross was not anonymous, and there was I forget who did it. It's been covered quite extensively now, but CBS News and others went deep. Vanity Fair, BBC, all told the story of how Ross ended up getting busted, in large part due to his ex-girlfriend. In cooperating with the intelligence agencies, they were able to track him down and bust him. If he had been anonymous, the Silk Road would probably still be going today. And that's the interesting question: is can technologies exist, fully decentralized, with a big middle finger to the international, government community? And
The internet, the Tors, and all the other layers on top, they're already there. Yeah. The interesting thing is that.
So just a thing. I take my question back. I stand corrected.
Hold on,
Can someone
let me just
educate?
say, anybody who thinks the Tor
Can someone
network is
educate me?
anonymous is.
Can someone educate me on what would happen then?
On what?
On what you're saying, Tyler. Exactly the last question you asked. Can someone educate me on can this continue to happen? Can decentralized technologies continue to exist with government bans?
They can,
so look,
go ahead.
I think what people forget, Tyler, the decentralization is a beautiful concept, but it has to meet centralization in order for it to thrive, right? When it does happen, that's where all these hardcore decentralized will back away, and they will go into their own silos, and so it will exist in a parallel universe in some form, right?
That's
So
called Coinbase, right? That's the first example of those two really meeting in a very official and ICO type way. That's already happening. That is the conjunction of two worlds. I mean, the interesting thing to me is I absolutely hate scams. I hate multi-level marketing. I hate Ponzi schemes. I hate all that stuff. It's horrible. And the more I've looked at Bitcoin in the past few months, the less scammy, the more clean and simple, and the people involved. If you just spend time with the people, it's just not what some of these psychological undertones suggest. It's just not about criminal activity. It's the worst place to perform criminal activity. It's not at all anonymous. It's just not scammy. It's just a hard currency, as in difficult to create. And the last time we had a hard currency like that was back in the gold times, before the governments all bought it back in the First World War. And I just think it's the best analogy is simply digital gold. It's just something we've been waiting for a while. This unless you believe in Keynesian economics, which to me, not the best chap to follow, then this business of constantly printing money and keeping the interest rates at zero it's a game of musical chairs, and the music's going to stop at some point. And you better be careful you've got to be careful what you're holding on to.
Can I say something? There's the latest news as this came out. This is Heyman from Toronto. So the Israeli crypto startup Simplex, it's set to be acquired for 200 to 250 million by Canada's Nuvei. That's Nuvei. The reason is this Israeli company Simplex provides a fiat infrastructure for the cryptocurrency ecosystem. It's an advanced negotiations. So they are currently in negotiation right now. So I'm just curious to know what everyone thought.
That's a new one. Would be good if Amir was able to join us from Tel Aviv. Let's ping him in, because he, being one of the leading investors in the Tel Aviv ecosystem, seems to have the inside scoop on every investment that happens there these days. So let's try and ping in Amir here. Go ahead. I got him.
It's like
Okay.
you're fishing, Tyler.
Yeah. Well, he normally joins in this segment, so I suspect he'll hop in here in a bit. And then when he does, please remind me to ask him on that one, Heyman. Thanks for that. Somebody else, let's do kind of round robin. Flash your mics if you have a headline to share from your part of the world, geographically or professionally, as we always do here. Raghav, is that a mic flash? No?
Yeah.
What do you got?
I wanted to bring this up. The British royal family, like Prince William and Kate Middleton, are gonna start. They've started like a YouTube channel, which I thought was like really interesting.
What is the topic of the content? Are they doing?
It's not really like specific what they're gonna talk about, but they posted like this highlight reel, and like with like the title "Welcome to our official YouTube channel," and like a lot of media, like a lot of tech and media outlets have like picked it up.
Yeah, interestingly speaks to the creator economy, and now we have a new prince and princess of the creator economy. it's now officialized. We have royalty in the creator economy.
I just wanted to add, this is Shirley. Numerous members of the royal family have tried to court the media with varying degrees of success. So this should be interesting to see how it pans out.
Hey, Tyler,
Yes.
I have some AI news.
Go for it, Sid.
Maybe we've already talked about it. Maybe Dave mentioned. China has its own version of Chinese GPT-3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they released a paper May 3rd on Archive, which is like the common open source publishing platform. It's actually bigger than GPT-3. It's been trained on, I think, twice the amount of data. It's only for Chinese language, but it's only a matter of time.
Apparently Huawei's behind it as well.
Yes, so it's trained on all of Huawei hardware, purely. It's basically custom built for Huawei hardware, which is like the most interesting thing, most interesting part of this. I've got
the VentureBeat article right here, if you'll allow me. It says Huawei.
How many parameters does it have?
Let me try and find that out real quick, and I will share this from the Twitter account for anyone who wants to dive deep on it. Huawei trained the Chinese language equivalent of GPT-3 for the better part of a year. OpenAI's GPT-3 has remained among the largest AI language models ever created, if not the largest of its kind. Via an API, people have used it to autonomously write emails and articles, summarize text, compose poetry and recipes, create website layouts, and generate code for deep learning in Python. But GPT-3 has a key limitations, chief among them that it's only available in English. The 45 terabyte dataset dataset model has trained on drew exclusively from English language sources. This week, a research team at Chinese company Huawei quietly detailed what might be the Chinese language equivalent of GPT-3 called Penghu Alpha. A 750 gigabyte model contains up to 200 billion parameters, 25 million more than GPT-3, and was trained on 1.1 terabytes of Chinese language ebooks, encyclopedias, news, social media, and web pages. The team claims that the model archives superior performance in Chinese language tasks spanning text summarization, question answering, dialogue generation. Huawei says it's seeking a way to let nonprofit research institutes and companies gain access to pre-trained Penghu models, either by releasing the code model and datasets via APIs. Similar, and then the article goes on to say that it has a similar architecture or a familiar architecture to GPT-3.
So I just want to add one more thing is talking to some of my Chinese friends in the field. They say specifically the common sense reasoning aspect of this is possibly a magnitude of order better than the English GPT-3, which is going to be interesting if they make it open source. And the language generation and like just simple generative text is going to have better common sense reasoning. And I'm going to stop talking now, let it be to people's imagination what that will entail.
Yeah. Interesting.
Tyler, from the same article, though, it says that GPT-3 is trained on 499 billion tokens, whereas Penghu is trained on 40, suggesting it's comparatively undertrained.
That's a better question for Sid.
It's just the way of the English language. I think you need more tokens in the English language to train the model to help it make better sense of the language, whereas with Chinese you
The
can get
characters,
away
yeah.
with fewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's symbolic, so that's the difference.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, very good share though, and it's also on Reddit's GPT-3 channel, where the community there is discussing it. So you can dive on that as well. That's a good one. And syncedreview.com also did a report on this. So it's picking up some attention in certain circles. But thank you for that very good share, Sid, as usual. Somebody got something else fun to share with the class
Jay
today.
from Grab. Jay from Grab has joined
Welcome
us.
back.
Oh man,
How's life as a public company, my friend?
No comments, but I just wanted to share something that came out on Reuters 9 minutes ago.
Okay. Breaking news then, is it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, say no more.
Cue that soundbite.
Here it is.
Yep,
Welcome, Jay, from the hot IPO of Grab out of Singapore.
Thanks.
Take it away, Jay.
Chinese tech giant Tencent is in talks with U.S. officials to hold on to its gaming investments in the United States. And if most people know, Tencent is invested in Riot Games, I think by 40%. For some reason, the article isn't now loading for me, but it is interesting to see that actually happening, and the fact that they're in negotiation with the U.S. government because everything has been frosty, as you know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tencent.
Developing news.
Yeah, just for those who don't know, and let's ping in my buddy Paul in Stockholm, who's the head designer for Candy Crush. He's American now, living in Stockholm, but the Tencent is arguably the world's biggest investor in the gaming space now. I don't think it's even close at this point. Like they seem to get involved in all of the top games wherever they happen to be. Sweden and Helsinki are two of the world's gaming hubs for casual games, and then the US, of course, and China, of course. And Tencent is so dominant, not only with their own gaming platform, but even more so as an investor, that I think they are concerned about how this US-China tech tension is brewing, and that they might get blocked out of investing in future tech companies in the US, etc. They're also an investor in Spotify and lots of other things, but outside of the gaming industry. They're one of the world's big global investors these days, and they leverage their presence in China, of course, to a certain extent. But I think these big investors, the interesting point that's being raised in all this is big global investors now stand to lose as a result of these international tensions, namely between the U.S. and China, where big American investors are getting nervous about if they're going to be able to continue investing in China, and vice versa. Tencent's understandably a bit worried about whether they'll be able to invest in the U.S. companies, for example. So it's a really interesting point that really I have not seen a journalist do a proper dive on this point.
Tencent actually had they've already faced very severe ramifications for this entire issue because they actually held a minority share in Activision because they used to help with Call of Duty Mobile among other games, and Activision actually forced them out as soon as the first trade war between America and China happened last year. So
actually, thanks Raga for bringing that, because Tencent actually owns 40% of Epic, and they're right now in negotiations with the U.S. government to not lose that, not to be forced to lose it.
Right, that's precisely the point. I mean, and Epic's just one. I mean, they're in nearly every, not literally all, but I mean more than anybody by a long way. They are deep into a lot of the top games.
Yeah, and to add on to that, right, as most people mentioned, Epic is invested as well by Tencent, but Epic's also having their own problems with Apple, right? So that's another issue that's popping up as well.
Yeah, that's, by the way, still one of the top stories of the week, and it will be until as the hearings are unfolding in this big case between Epic, which is the maker of Fortnite, one of the biggest games in the last few years, and Apple. And essentially the main complaint is that Epic, and also Spotify was really the first to raise the issue on a global level, where they didn't like the fact they had to give up 30% to Apple in the Apple ecosystem. Fortnite really decided to make a big issue out of it. And now other actors are coming along as well. Most recently in the last 24 hours is Netflix, where it was revealed that Apple, when they realized that Netflix was considering trying to remove itself from what they call the in-app purchases, which is how Apple gets its 30% fee, is through in-app purchases. Netflix was trying to architect itself in a way where the buyers of Netflix, Netflix subscribers, didn't have to pay the 30% Apple tax, the in-app purchase tax. Apple got very nervous and started writing letters to Netflix, both in a loving way and in a very don't you dare think about it way, kind of playing both sides of the good cop bad cop. And they clearly, in looking at some of these emails that got published in the last few hours, it's very clear Apple got very nervous at the thought that Netflix might be figuring out how to circumvent the in-app purchases, similar with Spotify. So it'd be really interesting to see how this all shakes out, as we all will soon, because it's very likely that the U.S. government, what they're doing is seriously questioning Apple's 30% tax. And it gets very complex here because Epic is also very friendly with Microsoft, because Fortnite is part of Microsoft's Xbox and, all of that. And Microsoft already voluntarily, without any request of anybody, kind of suspiciously lowered its rate from 30% down to 12% just the days before this case opened, sort of as assumedly, presumptively, as a signal to everybody watching that, why can't they lower their fees down from 30 down to whatever. But it's all going to get... all the laundry is going to be aired here very soon, and we'll get to see what's exactly going on. But Amy Klobuchar, who's kind of leading this whole thing, has said rather publicly in an interview recently that she doesn't understand why these platforms need to have 30%, and they could do just as well with a much lower rate and etc. But like I said, we will know all this very soon. So I know Michael's got strong opinions on this, as does our friend Greg, who's not here at the moment, and we've had this conversation before.
Just on the China and U.S. tensions, we were speaking earlier about Huawei, and I wanted to just share just what they've been trying to do. So, obviously, a lot of African mobile subscribers use Android, which is Google, right?
Yeah.
And so Huawei, but then they also use Android on a lot of Chinese brand smartphones, obviously because it's cheaper.
Yep.
But what Huawei is doing, because Huawei is pretty big in Africa, not just with their smartphones, but also with 3G, 4G, and so forth. And they've had great success in that space. But what they're trying to do now is start moving, or I guess releasing their own mobile operating system, Harmony, to all of their phones. I don't know how successful they're going to be in Africa, because Africans have predominantly been very used to using Android, but also because of the fact that Chinese phones are a lot cheaper, I think there's probably going to be a lot more using the Harmony operating system.
Right. Well, it's interesting because
Huawei news, if you want.
Yeah, hold on. Hold it for 2 seconds.
Related.
Yeah. Hold it for 2 seconds. I was just going to say that in Sweden, for example, and when America told Google, "Hey, Google, you're lovely and everything, but you cannot let these Chinese companies like Huawei use Android anymore." And more specifically, the Android App Store, the Google Play Store. So Huawei had to create, for the first time, a third store. So there's the Google Play Store, there's the Apple iOS Store, and now there's the Huawei Store. And the problem is it's still Android, but with a separate store. So Huawei had to tell all the developers, hey, everybody, you got to redo your code in a very subtle way to make it usable in our new Huawei store, which is identical to the Google store, but technically you just have to change a few things and re-upload it to our store. So the Google...
I want to tell a 10-10 story when there's a chance.
Sure.
Sorry to cut you off.
So I literally had Huawei come to... I have the largest tech event in Europe each month that I host in person live before COVID started. And Huawei came to me and said, "Hey, can we please jump up on stage, as a paid sponsor to start? We need to do a massive awareness campaign to let all of the developers know that they need to, reconfigure their apps for the Huawei store because we can't accept their Android apps, without being updated." And it's a big issue as part of this U.S.-Chinese tension. But let's do Cheryl and then Justin. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay. Huawei's chip unit HiSilicon to see massive decline in 5G chip market this year. HiSilicon, which had 23% of the 5G phone chipset market in 2020, is expected to see that share shrink to less than 5% this year. MediaTek, which designs processors, MediaTek is a Taiwan company which designs processors for mobile applications, is a major supplier to Chinese phones, like Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo. So basically, yep. So that's it. Yep. So with this replacement, because 5G, they can't sell their 5G chipset, right? So
Right.
I guess Qualcomm and MediaTek will expand
Right.
their presence to those countries.
Yep. Yeah, and America's become keenly aware of this issue of China's dependence on many. I mean, it's all the countries are all interdependent on each other on semiconductors, and America feels like we can decouple from China faster than China can decouple from the U.S. because of Qualcomm and things like this. So,
100%.
But the
right.
problem is, you see, I don't know if anyone has used any of the Huawei phones that are using this new operating system. From what I understand, it's just not user friendly. I know a few people that I was speaking to a couple of weeks ago who are on Huawei phones that have already sort of been released with this operating system. It's just so much harder. It's not user friendly, and it's hard to navigate. So I just, again, I don't know how successful they're going to be.
Well, if it lowers the cost of the phone, then the consumers might just be put up with it if it means it's $50 cheaper or whatever. Not that it should be, because Android isn't charging. I don't think there's it's an open source thing. There isn't a real cost to using Android other than all of the development around it. But Huawei might have real strategic advantages, no doubt. Obviously, there is, or they wouldn't have gone through the cost to build their own operating system. No doubt, there are some advantages, even if just for data reasons. I imagine there's others as well that we're not privy to, but why they would go through this. But and also, first versions of operating systems are notoriously, not very refined, and it might be clunky, and it might take time for them to. The thing that I'm surprised from what you're saying is why they didn't more copy the Android look and feel, because they're kind of renowned for doing that. I mean, you go to a Huawei store in China, you think you're walking into an Apple store. I mean, they look actually identical. So, I mean, why they have no bones about
because it's cheap junk, Tyler.
Yeah, well, yeah, but why? It's often cheaper. It's cheaper to copy, especially in software, like in the user interface layer of things. They could have made the user interface layer identical to Android, and that would have been cheaper than redesigning a new interface. Because
by the way, Google Pixel phones are quite cheap too, right? Isn't it?
True, but in
True,
China,
but we don't have
the Chinese phones
tools on those phones.
I mean, living in Southeast Asia as they do, all the leading phones are the Chinese phones, and specifically Xiaomi and Oppo and Huawei. Technically, on a technical basis, they outperform even the Apple phones at half the price. That's what's happening in the latest versions, specifically the Xiaomi phones. But it's the whole thing about a new OS operating system. I can imagine that people who have become used to using Android don't want to relearn a new operating system, and that's why I'm surprised that they didn't.
I think it will become a Chinese phone only for Chinese population. I don't
they've have the infrastructure as well, as she's saying. They supply
they do.
the 3G, 4G, 5G layer. The whole stack is all Huawei, and now they've got the device, and now they've got the operating system. I don't know why they wouldn't just copy the Android interface. That's a little peculiar to me. I imagine they will. I think it's just a matter of time.
You're probably right. I think they probably will do that.
You want me to pin in an ex-Android evangelist in?
Sure.
I don't know whether he's online now.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Guys, remember that
I
there's
just
been some
wanted to give
hacking.
an interesting story because Friday I'm having so this is like an interlude kind of associated with the first headline, Tyler, which was the gaming with Tencent. Is it okay if I give a little bit of context and story about doing business in China? Do you think that might be okay?
Yeah.
So Friday I'm having a U.S. expat. Went to Stanford, computer science from the Eton School in England, coming on my show to discuss doing business in China. And last night, he was describing to me a story with Tencent. And it was fascinating because I know nothing about this, but China is just so interesting and so cool in a lot of ways, and also atrocious in many others. And he was describing, essentially, we all know that the CCP the government picks winners and losers. So what they'll do is they'll basically clear out whole verticals for companies and give them complete control of that vertical, make them basically too big to fail, stifle out competition, and control the company ultimately in the long run. So in this example, he was explaining how Tencent has 40% of China's fintech payments. And in addition to that, they control the whole gaming industry in China. That's the servers. That's everything you can think of. It's basically mostly controlled by Tencent, and that's what makes them big. So this is why it relates to the gaming headline. Anyways, this was fascinating. He said that because Tencent has 40% of the fintech payments in all of China, that gives them access to the lottery. And many people in China, the vast majority, and this guy's goes between Beijing and Hong Kong, the vast majority of the lottery players in China that have the technological capacity to do so, and many do because of the mobile phones that Tyler was just so eloquently outlining that are apparently not all cheap junk, where they buy their lottery tickets through some form of fintech because they're buying them online, so forth and so on. So I think in 2018, there were 4 Tencent executives. And this is really a story about how bad the CCP government is and how they are willing to put coercive measures on companies through hurting their own citizens. So in 2018, you had 4 Tencent executives, and Tencent essentially runs a lot of the lottery in China, steal $800 million US from a lottery purse in mainland China. They obviously then fled the country with the money so that they weren't executed or whatever would happen to people who just flagrantly pissed in the face of the Chinese government. As a result, what China did was they cracked down on all of Tencent, but they didn't do it through some type of purge or some type of targeted measures against the executives in the company. They went after the Tencent bottom line through limiting the ability of Chinese citizens to game. They literally put a cap on the amount of hours that Chinese citizens could game. And as a result of that, obviously, the use rates and the demand for Tencent's products and therefore the fees that they were receiving completely nosedived and bombed. So this is just one way of showing that despite China picking Tencent as a winner, despite China clearing out the whole gaming vertical and a lot of the servers that are being used and essentially clearing out most of the fintech vertical, giving them 40% of that business, this company is still under the thumb of the Chinese government. And if they do something wrong, not only will this company be at harm, but also the citizens in China will lose some rights potentially in some which way. So if you're from the U.S., you really have to question whether you want to do business and you trust doing business with a company that is essentially at the whimsy of such an oppressive and authoritarian government. I thought that was fascinating. This guy's clearly an expert. He said that he has to keep 3 different books for his own companies because of the way that you need one for your investors, you need one for yourself that's accurate, and then you need one to give the Chinese government. So if anybody wants to learn more about this, my room Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, this guy's going to be on, and he's going to be going the ins and outs of basically tech business in China.
Very cool. Thanks, Justin. And as you can tell, you now see why I'm a fan of Justin's and the rooms that he mods, where he goes deep into the paint. It's not, he doesn't do charity fundraisers for the politicians that join his rooms. He has he doesn't play softball. He's in it to help the audience, and it's a really interesting thing. I want people to understand fundamentally why I think Justin is so important here in Clubhouse, because he has a bridge to DC. He's in DC physically, works in DC daily, and has the opportunity to be the bridge between the American representatives and folks in DC and Clubhouse. And when he hosts those people, and you can see his schedule by clicking on his bio. Generally, you have your schedule every weekday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and I would highly encourage people to go to those rooms and participate, especially when he has people that he can do Q&As with, because as those rooms gain momentum, it makes it easier to get subsequently more interesting guests, and eventually, hopefully, that will snowball into something very meaningful. It already is, but I mean, very incredibly substantial.
And to your point, Tyler, we had you run the best newsroom here. We had one of your guests on, and they asked a Democratic congressman about Bitcoin regulation, which was a start. You started off the show talking the ins and outs in Bitcoin, and everybody assumes, right, Tyler, that the Democrats are going to want to regulate, tax and regulate.
Right.
They're going to want to just get this under their thumb, get this in control. Big bad U.S. government, regulate, screw the common man and woman. It was fascinating. You had a great question asked by one of your loyals. I forget who it was. And the congressman replies, I do not believe in regulating Bitcoin. I don't believe it's used that frequently for illicit activity. We can argue about that a little bit later. But he also said that the impact of regulating Bitcoin won't be on the big players that use Bitcoin, but it will be on the longer tail, the retail investors, the people who have maybe 1 or 2 Bitcoins, and the people that are really looking for upward mobility through technology and new forms of investing. And he was the first Democrat who's very tight with leadership to come out and say, we will absolutely not regulate Bitcoin. So if you're in news, and you like this stuff, you can come in and you can get a congressperson to comment on something, get them on the record where they may not have made a comment on it before. And I don't think this guy has, to be honest.
It's so interesting. By the way, Rico Nakamoto did join the room, and I invited him on stage, and I don't see him on stage. Is he here?
Oh, welcome back.
Is he there? No? I don't think. I think
Rico-san, can you please come up?
I clicked invite when he was in the audience, and he does owe us 1 Bitcoin. So he might have fled. Rico, did you run away?
I can't see him. Does your database not track him?
We invited him into the room. I pinged him. He did arrive into the room. I invited him on stage, and he magically disappeared. But if I owe, it might have something to do with the fact that he owes us 1 Bitcoin. But I'm just speculating.
I have some news.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is from news from Microsoft. So I have some people there I know. But this is general knowledge though. Came out from a blog from the head of legal, and then it was kind of trickled down to Sweden where I catched it. But I don't know. I think it's just an interesting discussion. I was looking for Jen. I think she's not here anymore because it's kind of her ballpark. But
oh no, I'm back.
Oh, cool, great. Answering Europe's call, storing and processing EU data in EU. So today they're announcing that a new pledge for European Union about how to cater for the Schrems II Act, if you know what that is. Maximilian Schrems was, I think, an Austrian guy who basically took, I think it was Google to court, that he didn't like that his data was moved from EU to the US, and there was actually a bunch of data that was moved from Ireland to the US, and that's why there's something called the Schrems I and the Schrems II Act that is basically regulating this. And so EU now is creating something what they call, we're calling this this plan, which is basically kind of this cloud service that keeps all the data in EU data boundary for the Microsoft cloud. So I guess Microsoft's trying to kind of position themselves that they're very different from Google and Amazon from the cloud services. Not sure what this means. I was trying to understand a little more, but I just catched it and I thought it would be interesting to kind of air this news and understand what's going on, because obviously
Yeah,
these
if you
cloud
want to send
services.
it,
Yeah,
it's
it's in
part it's
your Instagram.
GDPR, which is keeping it. Okay, so it's I have not seen it. I don't know what it is, but GDPR requires you can't take the information out of the EU without the person's permission. And that gets dicey when you get into these cloud servers like AWS and Azure, as you're saying, and Google. But what they have had to do, my understanding, is to partition those clouds so that the servers are residing in the EU, but it just gets technologically challenging, and especially for companies that are worldwide. So if it's sitting on the cloud, the company might actually be the controller there, controlling where that data is going versus the Google Cloud. So there's just a lot of layers there.
Yeah, so one thing that I heard, that is possible if it's a US company, so without Shrems, basically the US, if you have a headquarters in the US, the government of the United States can basically require after the data, but a gag order not to divulge that they have data because of just or just I don't know for different reasons, and so EU of course.
Is it just me or he's
Yeah,
breaking
no,
up?
it's him.
No,
Yeah, I
it's
was gonna
bugging
say, is
out.
it me or him? Yeah,
It's bugging out.
I can't
Yep.
hear it.
We will come back. Circling
Hey,
back.
hey, Taylor, I have
Hey,
a news.
hey, Ton. Hold on, there's a robot trying to hack in here. Hold on,
Yeah,
Azak.
I
Go
can
ahead,
hear it.
Tan.
Yes, I just got some news that sellers in Pakistan now will be able to sell directly on Amazon instead of having to
Interesting.
reroute their goods. And as you know, the previous option for Pakistani traders was basically TradeKey, which is a Saudi-owned platform, or Alibaba. Now they'll be able to sell directly on Amazon through, directly from Pakistan. So
nice.
That's an interesting development for the small.
Do you or anyone happen to know what are kind of like the top 5 or the kind of the top most exported items or sold items from Pakistan on Alibaba or on e-commerce?
Well, on TradeKey and
Textiles.
Alibaba, it's textiles, right?
Yeah.
So it's because Pakistan is a big producer of denim,
Textiles,
cotton
medical
material.
supplies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
textiles, medical supplies, and cotton. I mean, anything related to commodities. I think grain, textiles, medical supplies.
Yeah.
Agriculture products.
Soccer
Wheat.
balls, footballs,
Soccer
right?
ball,
Soccer balls, sports,
textiles, medical supplies.
Cool. I'm a big fan of it. I mean, I think this helps countries that Thailand's eagerly waiting for Amazon to be able to come here, so they can, and helping not just having the platform available, but it takes one more step beyond that sometimes where they need to help.
Talking about platforms, Tyler, have maybe in congratulations to you. Have we just broken a record?
No, right now we're the number 1 room in Clubhouse at this very moment due to the awesome conversations, that we all collectively co-create here each day. But yeah, we just.
I suggest as an
What
applaud
is
to
the
you
GDP of tech news
and
around the world?
Yeah.
Tyler.
Well, no.
hang on there, Greg.
It's
As an
starting.
applaud to you and Cal and Cheryl, may we all applaud them, please?
No, it's nothing to do with me or Cal. It has to do with the people who bring good articles here and the people like.
It's
Thank
completely.
you, Tyler.
It's
Thank you, because
completely the
I
discussion.
accept your compliments, and
Yes.
and no, it's not really about me either. It's about everyone else here.
But I think that's what makes both
Must
of
be
you such
Greg.
great hosts of this show, because you realize and you recognize that it's
Oh,
not just
stop
about
it.
you.
You only say this
Greg,
because it's
stop.
true.
We all know it's Greg.
No, it has to
We
be
all know it's
recognized.
Greg. But
Must be the king of
the king of
Clubhouse,
Clubhouse has
It's
arrived.
because Tyler, with his wisdom and his new view on life from his 40s,
Yep.
I think he has taken me under his wing and developed me into the phoenix and the amazing bastard that I am.
It's I need to get a royal trumpet announcement for when Greg joins the room.
I would
Yeah.
love this in a clip.
Of course he would.
Make it
Yes.
so.
So be it, or whatever Picard used to say.
Make it
Tyler,
Make it
so.
so.
Make it
Make it
so.
so.
Tyler,
Yeah.
you are competing with a room that's saying how to buy a house in the US for $7,500.
Yes. Well, I know from my angle, I'm competing with the Dr. Umar Johnson versus Kevin Samuels room at the moment. But yeah. Oh, you're right. There, I see the
and
house. How to buy a house for 7,500 in crypto. By the way, yeah.
Yes.
But we are beating the dating room and the meditation room, and so anyway, it's tough competition out in these clubhouse streets out here. But
well, I have to say, I have to give a shout to Greg. He did a great job doing that room that we started earlier in the morning. There is Clubhouse becoming the dating platform.
Yep.
Oh,
So
thanks, Dan.
Greg had a
Yeah,
lot of fun in that room, I
Greg
think.
and
we
Stacy on
shut
the
that thing
stage.
down pretty well. I helped a young man sow his wild oats in Canada. It was amazing. And get him past the
Should we be
COVID
afraid?
crazy and get him. He needed to wet his beak over in Canada, and we got him there.
I think we'll do another one, Greg, later in the evening for the techies in the Bay Area.
Well,
This
before
wetting
you
of the
do
beak
that,
is
Oh God, do
becoming
they
too
need help?
much. This wetting of the beak is becoming too much, man.
before you do
Yeah.
that, everybody, if they're interested in Pakistan, like we were just talking about, I'm having the former Pakistan ambassador to the U.S. on my show tonight. So maybe check that out
boom.
before
What
Tom's
time is
dating
that,
site, and then
Justin?
go
Ring
Justin,
us
relax
thanks
up
for
for
when
about
you
getting us
can
3 weeks.
back
ring
on
us up when
track.
you can get the current ambassador, because the former one is just not. Come on, Justin, you can punch higher than this.
We don't want the current ones because they won't say shit but
Well,
propaganda.
that's what I mean. Let's get them to come on and get them to say shit, because we need to make news here and get them fired the next day. That would be
Justin, I disagree. I think it would be the past
Back
ones
to
that would
tech.
say propaganda. I think the existing ones might not.
Back to
the
tech
I'm
most
going to
boring
discussion.
thing
disagree
that
with
could
that
happen
one,
is that we would have
Faraz.
the most boring thing that could happen is that we would have the former ambassador. The most awesome thing that could happen is that we have the current ambassador, and the next day they get fired, and Tyler and Justin and me are in the headlines for getting them
Okay,
fired. That would
Greg,
be
we know
amazing.
that's not going to happen.
Come on, the world is limited by your imagination,
Yeah.
Cheryl.
That's
Stop it.
that's the
Is it just me,
Sure.
or Greg's volume is always louder than everybody else's?
are you on?
Is
No,
it
I
just
just
That's
yell
his
me?
all the time.
passion coming
I wake
through.
up in the
No,
morning and I
That's
start
not.
yelling, and I don't stop until I go to sleep.
That is part of his
Greg.
nurturing.
Come on, folks. He did
I
work at
can't help
Apple.
that
He knows how to
I have
fine
the
tune.
manliest I have the manliest, most powerful voice that I
Oh
can muster. I don't
goodness.
even have to fake it like that Holmes
That you
lady did at
do, Greg.
Theranos.
I
That you
This
do.
is
by the
just
way,
it. This is
I
me.
have a whole.
Tyler,
Yes, watch this.
that calls for
Yeah, does anybody
another
have
whole room.
headlines?
I
I'm
have a new
sorry.
superpower with Club Deck, which is a mute all button that mutes everybody's mics simultaneously.
Ooh,
So
Wow.
there there it goes.
I'm
cool.
gonna get back into Club Deck.
So
Ooh.
Wait, it didn't work on me.
it not
Yeah, Greg's
it
still
did
Let's
unmuted.
try it
it did
again.
from everyone else's perspective. Yeah, but
It did I oh,
yeah.
interesting.
So the I want to get into some more headlines now, and just do a quick room reset now that we're at the bottom of the hour. We're basically been jumping all over the map topically so far. And so we can take it in any direction from here. There's a ton of headlines that we've yet to cover. So if anyone can feel free to chime in with anything that they have from their part of the world, geographically or professionally, and it will be our joy to dive in and validate or deconstruct and argue both sides of it, as we're known to do here. As a
How you
real
doing,
good,
Tyler?
thanks. Welcome. Is that
I appreciate
yeah?
you. This is
Hey,
Luis down at the
Luis.
bottom. I want you to know I'm a great fan. I mean, I can blow a lot of smoke of how much I love you and Cal for this room, but I will move on to what I'm very
Cool.
interested in, if
Yeah, do
that's
it.
okay. I've been following for a while. My expertise and my not expertise. I don't want to say I'm expert, but I've been in the film industry for 22 years.
That's
Filmmaker,
expertise. Yeah.
specializing in virtual reality, large resolution, things of that
Cool.
nature, and that's kind of my forte. In that process, I got involved into learning about cryptocurrency some years ago. My question is for Justin. It's very interesting and valuable to have him here present, and I'd have a direct question that he can answer. Justin, can you answer the following? Something unique I got to experience in Puerto Rico at a conference, a blockchain conference. There's multiple conferences happening in 2018 after the boom of 2017. The conferences were very, very interesting on the attitude, the overall atmosphere of how valuable blockchain and all this influx of money was going to help people, and particularly Puerto Rico, especially after the hurricane which devastated Puerto Rico. For those that didn't get to visit Puerto Rico during that time period, this was directly after, unfortunately, somebody was throwing paper towels as you get a paper towel, you get a paper towel. That's not what my question is about. But Puerto Rico was such in a devastated state at that time, trying to get power going at that time. The conference was actually discussing how they were going to help Puerto Rico with all this money because all this investment.
Luis?
I never knew.
Was
Yes,
Brock Pierce one of the main speakers at that event?
He was there.
Brock.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about this.
Go ahead.
Continue.
So my question is, did it help Puerto Rico? Did it really help of what they were talking about? Can you give us insight to how this ended up going? I think you would be one of the people that know. Thank you very much. My name is Luis.
So Luis, the funny story is my friends, I have some friends involved in crypto. Like they're very, very passionate about crypto. Sorry, I'm cooking my lunch right now. And I was a political appointee for the governor of Puerto Rico, stationed in Washington, D.C., handling a lot of the high-level stuff. So when Trump came to the island, for example, we had to decide, like, should he go out and meet people? And we ultimately decided, yes, he should. And that's where he was throwing the paper towels. But an interesting story behind that is that was the only area in the island that we felt with certain confidence there wouldn't be a violent attack on President Trump, because it was the wealthiest and most conservative area. And the people of Puerto Rico, many of who support Trump, were so outraged by his response, by his media statements, by his just lack of empathy and sympathy to what the people were experiencing on the island. We in the government had legitimate concerns about the president's safety, not to mention whatever the Secret Service was thinking. So that's one
Justin,
little anecdote.
Does Trump know who you are, Justin?
But no, but to
okay.
continue
on.
No, I don't.
As you're making your grilled cheese there, I just wanted people to have a little bit of the context. I love you, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't pretend to know Tim Cook and all these people. Sorry, I'm just honest on stage.
Well, no, I mean, if you asked Tim Cook who I was, he would know, because I spent
sure
a lot of
would,
time
Greg.
with him one-on-one
Greg,
and
I'm sure
all
he
that.
would. Can you just like have a little bit of impulse control, put that narcissism away a little bit, and let me try and answer this question?
I won't, because you're like, actually, I dragged you in a room yesterday, and I want to make sure that I do it a little bit in public too.
I'm so going to enjoy this.
You talk authoritatively about this stuff, but I want you to be who you really are and be authentic, which is somebody who you were at the fringes of these organizations, and now you're interested as a very smart and very apropos leader of a clubhouse group on Politics and Media 101. I do like the group. I do like you, but you don't have to position so much. And so just tone that down a little bit, and I will shut up.
Greg, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm not going to say you're projecting.
Tone it down a little bit.
I'm not going to say you're projecting, but if anybody
that's
wants
good,
to,
because
can
I don't say
respond,
a single
Greg,
thing that isn't factually verifiable.
So if people, first off, Greg, it would be awesome if I could just respond, right?
Yeah, for sure. But stop with I was there stuff. You weren't there. You don't know these things. You don't know what people think at the high levels of those organizations. I'd be surprised if you even poured Diet Coke for Donald Trump. I don't even like the guy.
Hey, Greg, can I jump in here real quick, you guys?
No. Let me just speak.
Okay. Yeah.
So like,
I was there on the ground. I just want to add to your thing, Justin, and I'll let you go. I spent a year and a half as a special advisor to the Puerto Rican government, so I can add a lot to this story.
Let's get Sonali in here as well.
Hold on. All that I'm saying is, from the Puerto Rican perspective, yes, I was on these conference calls with Chief of Staff John Kelly, with Donald Trump. We were the governor's foremost advisors in
Lord.
Washington, D.C. If anybody wants to find us out, go
I've had people
Can
be
I
on
finish
conference
speaking,
calls
dude?
with me as well. Yeah, you can speak. Just stop with the positioning stuff
I'm
and
not.
just say what you
But
think.
Greg,
You don't
Greg,
actually have.
the protocol is if you have evidence to the contrary, bring it. But if without evidence,
Okay.
you know, let's let him punt. You know.
Okay, fair enough, Tyler. But I do have
Okay,
evidence.
then we'll give you the mic to share it.
Please.
Yeah, I'll let him continue speaking, and then we can talk about evidence. Yeah.
Okay, that is wonderful. And if anybody does want evidence, they can reach out to George Laws Garcia. He's on this app. He was my boss. He was also a political appointee for the governor of Puerto Rico, and he wound up being the executive director of the Puerto Rico Federal Affairs Administration, which represents the governor of Puerto Rico in Washington, D.C. He was in all these phone calls with me. He's seen the work that I've done, and I'm not positioning myself in any which way. I'm positioning myself honestly as a former political appointee for the governor of Puerto Rico, charged with handling Washington, D.C. relations with Congress and the executive branch. So all that I was saying
back to the Bitcoin thing.
All that I'm trying to do is, Tyler, ultimately we try and have a respectful conversation where one person talks, the other person talks, and if there's something directed at the first person who was speaking, that person is given some time to be able to respond and not just completely interrupted every single time.
I just wanted to introduce some structure to the process of, questioning credentials and whatnot, which people are valid to do, but which we'll get into that. But for now, go ahead and speak on the Bitcoin thing.
It is completely fine, and I just gave everybody the person that they can go verify those credentials with. And I didn't even mention working for Trump. I didn't mention knowing Trump. But if people really need to verify my RNC credentials, go to Vice President of Fox News.
That's not what I'm saying, bro.
Raj
But
Shah.
why don't you get to the point?
Can you not interrupt me? It's getting very frustrating, Greg. You just come in here.
If you're directing your comments
use
at
these
me,
ad hominem
then I will
attacks,
respond.
and you continue to interrupt people.
I don't know what the new rules are, but if you're directing your comments at me, I'll respond. Otherwise, I want you to talk about your Bitcoin stuff.
With all due respect, gentlemen, could we please get to the point? If
I don't even want to now because this guy's a 35-year-old guy and he can't even have a conversation.
Yeah. So let's give
Justin. Do you want to
Justin.
argue with me, or do you want to make?
He wants. We need him to have the floor without interruptions, and so you can make.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Go ahead, Justin.
You're not trying. I've tried to respond. You're still interrupting me.
You're not trying. You're talking to me again. Stop talking to me if you don't want to talk.
He's gonna go, and if there's another interruption, I will solve the problem and the way that I see fit. But go ahead, Justin.
Thank you, Tyler. I do love contributing to this room, but I just, there's some human decency in just letting people respond. But anyways, for the Brock Pierce stuff, it was really interesting. And Luis, I can't talk to how much of an impact that it had, but while the conference was being set up, we were involved directly with that, and they were reaching out and they were trying to get the governor to show up. And there was a lot of big promise about how Bitcoin and these new investments were ultimately going to just bring in a windfall of private money and tech money to the island of Puerto Rico. But if you look into Brock Pierce's past and the allegations that have been brought against him, that's ultimately what we found. And it gave us very big concern as government officials. So the governor was originally expected to attend that conference. I brought that personally to his attention, and he ultimately backed out of the conference. From my understanding, though, the government officials kind of looked at this as an example of tech people maybe overrepresenting their credentials, overrepresenting the impact that they were going to have on the island, because a lot of the reason why these things were happening in Puerto Rico wasn't because of Hurricane Maria, but it was actually the tax structure. And because of the tax structure, a lot of the benefits that they were alluding to or outright claiming that would happen never happened. So that's all that I was trying to say. It took 30 seconds when it should have taken 30 seconds. It took 10, 15 minutes.
I'll contribute.
I think Tyler, we raised this point about a couple
I remember
of weeks ago,
when you did,
about Brock Pierce,
and just
Brock
to be
Pierce
fully,
and Lolita
I know,
landing in
I remember it, Kieran, and you remember my response as well, which is, I've known Brock long before.
No, I think we had to be very careful when we say we are friends.
I agree. I'm with you.
Because
I not, but
it's like
but Kieran, hear me out. So not only have I known Brock since long before Bitcoin, I've talked to Brock about the accusations against him that Justin raised, which are of sexual inappropriateness, even with minors and etc. And Brock, when you have coffee with him, as I've done many times, has no problem discussing these points privately in not even just one-on-one context, but like in a group dinner context, as he's done, many times, no doubt. I've seen him do it many times myself personally, so I assume he's doing it even when I'm not at dinner with him, which is only once or twice a year. But when he addresses it, it's hard to argue his points. But I just leave it at that. I don't.
The thing is, Tyler, I think if you take the wealth away, would you still, feel the same way? If you take the kind of the wealth and the way the interconnected community that he created.
Well, when I think of Brock, I don't think of any wealth because I knew him long before he had any wealth.
Yeah, exactly. So would you still, feel the same way?
Kieran, yes. To your point, with the conversations that I had about him was when he was doing a startup before Bitcoin, and the question was, could he do a startup? Was he an investable entrepreneur? With the press articles, with his Google results that he has, is he an investable entrepreneur? Long before this is, nothing to do with Bitcoin at all. But that's why I think he went in part his interest in Bitcoin. He's always been quite ahead of the curve, and maybe part of the reason he got interested in Bitcoin was because it was a way for him to participate in tech without having to deal with the baggage of his Google results. And in part to his benefit, assumedly, he seems to be doing quite well. He actually does really well as an investor himself. He's one of the largest investors in crypto companies globally. So he's doing fine. He understands why people feel the way about him that they do. He doesn't even really...
Can I ask you something, Tyler? So Epstein, how do you think he built his wealth? How did Epstein?
I don't know. I don't know zero about Jeffrey Epstein.
No. My point is this: not through sheer, the expertise in the one single area, but because of the collection of the funds and the access, the network that he had, he managed to accumulate that wealth. I think in this kind of also particular community within certain people, I'm not saying all of them. There's a certain group of people, but they have this.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to your mic. No,
access. Sorry, I think I'm getting a phone call, Tyler. I'm going to stop it there. My point is that we have to be very careful, I think, in a public forum to be aligning this, because history, I think history is a lot of times, there's a saying
Kieran,
about...
I think you made your point.
You have... I'm not arguing your point, really. We don't really disagree on much.
Kieran,
to the point of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's really interesting because to a certain extent, Brock was sort of leading that charge of let's all go down to Puerto Rico with our new crypto, wealth, where it will be taxed much less. That was the real...
Tyler, Brock's in the room.
Yes, somebody has an open mic there. Thank you. So, Brock joined the room. Hey, Brock, jump on stage.
I asked Brock's in the room. I'd asked him to join.
Hop on stage here, Brock. Brock knows I think highly of him. So I'm just for context, Brock, I'm essentially defending you as somebody who I've met, and known for many years. And I'm characterizing you as an upstanding person and against folks who, no one's actually charging you with anything direct. They're just pointing out that there are articles out there that kind of defame you in a particular light. And I've said I've actually been in coffee conversations where you address that very head on in a very mature way, and to the degree that I had any concerns, you totally appeased any kind of I didn't really have any concerns, but I think you totally addressed it beautifully. And I was saying that you're one of the leading crypto investors, that you've done incredibly well in Bitcoin. And when I think of Brock Pierce, the thing that comes to my mind is, 2008, when it was still under $200, and you said, it's either going to go to 50,000 or zero, and put in 1%. It's the kosher thing to do. It's the wise thing to do. And I want to thank you for that advice. And, every interaction, because one other thing to keep in mind, Santa Monica, where Brock and I is a very small little town of geeks where really everybody knew everybody. There was really nowhere to hide. Brock was a very good actor in our ecosystem. I mean, and unanimously. I mean, there was never any inappropriate anything. I mean, and this is not over a week or months, this is over years. So to the degree...
The 1% thing is a really smart thing to do,
Yeah.
Tyler, because it's very similar to what I did as well. Like, people don't understand this kind of expected value and managing risk and volatility and all these kinds of things. He's just popped in and out of stage, which is the reason that I like. But if he wants to speak, then I'm gonna sit down because I don't know much about the Brock Pierce controversy. But I do think he sounds like an
So
interesting
Brock's
guy
here.
we should
Hey,
allow to speak.
welcome, Brock.
Hey, if I can just say something. Hey, Brock, how are you, buddy? Brock, there's a gentleman on stage called Justin Higgins who is discussing the governor and some recent conversation about the governor of Puerto Rico. You keep popping in and out. I'm not sure if that's the VPN, if that's the internet connection or whatnot, or if you're going. I'm not sure what's happening there.
Yeah, do you see this, Tyler? He's popping in and out of the stage. I'm not sure if you can see it on Club Deck.
When he comes back, we can
But he's
just
done
go
it like
directly to
a
him.
half dozen times. It might be that he's experiencing a bug or needs to update the app or something like that. So maybe PM him and
it
let him
seems
know.
like a VPN issue. Yeah. Anyhow,
just for clarity, I'd like everybody to know my experience there because I brought up the question. There were no group or couple that were more providing of authentic information than Crystal and Brock's group of people. I was neutral person there. I was just learning, and my goal was to learn how I could help the film industry use blockchain for independent filmmakers to give the ability to fundraise for the independent films as an independent filmmaker myself and working in the union myself. So for people to know.
So if I can talk now, please, if everyone can just let
I
me talk
apologize.
now.
Yes, sir. You go ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Brock, can you hear me, brother?
No.
Maybe not.
Brock, does he use? It looks like he uses Clubhouse quite a bit. I wonder what the problem is. Yeah.
Where is he based now? Is he in the US?
Anywhere.
That's right.
Yeah, he's probably on a jet. Anywhere. Let's tackle the topic if he's able to come back. Brock, you there? Let's move on to the next topic. But when he again in and out. Brock, you there, brother?
Maybe try unmuting the mic. That's all right.
Well, I will just say, I don't know Brock, but I kind of get what Tyler is going for. And one of the things that tech people have to deal with when they're, getting dragged by the media and by, political pundits and wannabes and stuff like that, is the fact that, technology takes a while before it takes hold, and you got to try to get it to do great things. And one of the worst things in the world are naysayers, who are right quite a lot because of Bayesian prior probability of failure is quite high. But it's much better to be specific and actually predict the things that are going to work and use technology to your benefit, which might be what Brock is trying to do. I can't say that whatever he was trying to do in Puerto Rico at that very moment, because I don't know it, was successful in the moment. But you can still be directionally correct and, just have not everything goes right every time that you try, and you don't always, you don't always kill the mammoth the first time that you try to go hunting. Sometimes you got to eat a few lizards. So I think, Tyler, I don't know if that is a good summary, but that's how I feel about tech changing
There's
the
an
world.
interesting point to raise, which is in the last presidential election, he did put in a bid as a presidential nominee, and he did run a campaign to some degree on his own dime, and did have a tour bus and was going all around, which would be a very peculiar thing to do for somebody who had a verifiably past that he was accused of. It would be a non-starter. So I would just put that on the table.
I don't know. It seems like we're more and more accepting of various people as president these days.
Sounds like he's
Biden,
on a plane, Tyler.
Like Trump is not a good guy, but Biden also wasn't a good guy. Like if you look in Biden's past, he was a compulsive liar. And so we elect very controversial people for president. And so I wonder, I don't know anything about Brock, but I would say that the bar for being president personally is constantly changing.
Yeah, but what he's accused of, he would not be allowed to. It would be the end. It would be complete. And more importantly, he would be arrested and everything else. So which he never really was. So that's why.
Well, if it were
right,
true,
correct. That's my point. Precisely my point. Yes.
But
Hang on, guys. I think he's on a jet. But Brock's the sort of guy, he'll open his mic as soon as he can. once he gets off the jet. Okay. So let's continue on the topic. But the silence in the room tells me that whatever Mr. Higgins was saying and whatever other people were saying, the silence in the rooms tells me that it's extremely quiet now.
No, Frost. As I'm eating, I'm not one to interrupt people when they're talking first. Second off, Tyler can vouch for what I said. I just said because of the allegations that we heard. I didn't make any claim on the validity of the allegations.
Really, Justin? There was many allegations I heard.
And thirdly,
there was many allegations I heard about the governor coming in and not wanting to join in.
I make some allegations, and then we just don't have to talk about the validity of them.
Really, Justin? That's not what I heard.
Farad, these allegations are extremely. Come on, they are talking about child. Minor,
we're talking about.
These are different kind of allegations.
Now you want to start, Kieran?
Talking about allegations while acting.
I'm testing up remote audio is muted.
Okay, thank you. Tyler, all that I said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that based on the allegations that were out in the press, we advised the governor not to go to that conference. Is that not all that I said?
That's what I took from it.
That's it. So I don't know why everybody's upset about trying to put words in my mouth.
It's historical. You talk a lot about allegations.
Greg, can you shut the fuck up for a second, please? This is getting...
dude, the fact that I'm making you mad is exactly the point, because I'm blowing up your spot and I'm blowing up your tactics of talking about people and kind of halfway making claims but not really making them. And look, you're my friend. If you don't want to be my friend anymore, that's fine. But your mother is supposed to love you and care for you and support everything you do. I won't support you in this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
wait. The allegations were more from Kieran. Okay, just the general sense from.
Cal, let me stop you there. Cal, please.
Guys, it appears Mr. Brock is back in the room. Maybe we could allow him.
No, we can't move on from this. I'm just getting attacked by Greg Duffy for doing literally nothing.
Dude, you talked about me again, and I responded.
Maybe we could allow Mr. Brock to speak.
But if you want to bring it back up, then I'll win.
Okay, let's see.
Carl, I think let me clarify something here. Right?
Kieran, one second. Can we just see if Mr. Brock is available on the mic?
Mike.
He's
Brock?
gone.
I
don't
think so.
Talk when he wants to, guys. Let's just carry on. He'll talk when he wants to.
Brock, whenever you can, you just unmic and speak, okay? We'll just wait for you. Anyway, carry on.
So let's clarify something here, Cal, right? So what it is this. We come to this room because we strongly believe in certain technology. There are amazing people who represent this technology, blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin, all of that stuff. And when there's something out there, it's been so. If you look at these, the news that we talked about, for me, it's out in the press, right? And it's been like there for 20, 25, 30 years. And if you talk to a lot of the crypto community, people talk about it. And to me, that's just worrying, because that's something that, the person like that need to come in and, they had to, So to me, that's important. That person comes in, defend themselves, right? So that's why I always try to raise a point.
No, Kieran. Kieran, I stopped you once. I stopped you twice. I stopped you thrice. You didn't listen.
Well, hang on for us. 1 second. Kieran, I knew nothing about this. I've just read about it. Everything I read is allegations. Okay. So, which people could have allegations against me, right? About anything. So let's just, let's just move the discussion forward, understanding that they're allegations, which people can, anybody can write an allegation. And as I read it now, and Tyler makes a very interesting point, and I have no dog in the boat. Yeah, what do you call it again? A dog in the fight here, right? All I'm saying here, when Tyler makes a good point, like if with these kind of stated allegations that I see on the Wikipedia page, and I've gone behind into some of the articles here, just a couple of seconds. With these stated articles, you wouldn't run for president, right? So I mean, okay, so there's 2 points there. We have potentially Brooke in the room here, and let's get to the point around the Bitcoin.
Yeah, the point was that I think Brock was very interested in creating a crypto community in a place that had a more favorable tax regime to crypto at that time, which was Puerto Rico. So it made perfect sense in that way. They were really trying to build a robust community around that. There was tax savings to incentivize them to do that, and then, with the hurricane that happened, they happened to be there anyways. And they thought, well, we're here. We might as well earn our keep and do what we can for the ecosystem here, which from my experience with Brock is totally fits with his personality. That when something bad happens there, being in a position of privilege, he would gather up the community to try and help the locals there and earn some goodwill from the local community. That all makes perfect sense. To what degree the event that they were producing was perceived as disingenuous or whatever. I mean, things get taken out of context quite often. My own events often get attacked by various interests. My event, I had the leader of the Hong Kong protest to speak at my event, and the Chinese ambassador to Sweden threw a complete hissy fit in the press, claiming it to be anti-Chinese and yada yada yada. And I've had
Tyler, this is my beef because I actually have a problem with the advice not to meet with this person because I'm looking just even at the Wikipedia article and it says that this was a civil lawsuit. It was not corroborated, and actually the primary plaintiff has been convicted of fraud and has admitted to filing false lawsuits in other sexual abuse cases. So when you talk about the allegations, like the court of public opinion does matter, and in this case, it sounds like it blocked a meeting for what could be a person who has nothing wrong with them and everything that they're trying to do that is great. It blocked a meeting, and this is a tactic. This is a political tactic to talk about the allegations and never go so far that you can get accused of libel or slander, and then let the court of public opinion decide. And that's why I stand up against it. I don't know anything about Brock. But the fact is, I shouldn't even have to say that because look, this doesn't even look like there's nothing like even what I'm reading in the Wikipedia thing is a civil lawsuit that was not corroborated and actually has a person who's admitted to doing this as a tactic before as the primary plaintiff. Come on, like we need to be way more balanced in the way that we talk about this to be intellectually honest.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
Tyler, I just wanted to say, it's kind of crazy, right? If I'm inflating my credentials, yet I'm the reason why the meeting didn't happen. So there's a little logical incongruence.
Hold on. Hold on. What?
No,
that was Brock's voice. Unfortunately, Brock, your signal isn't working at the moment, but you're welcome to chime in whenever your signal gets better. I'm going to mute Aslak.
He's on a jet, right? He's on a jet.
Something like that. Dr. Kellep, you have your mic open. Was there something you wanted to add?
Finally here, I'm having...
That's okay. Chime back in when you can, Brock, if you can hear me. Dr. Kellep, yeah, you've been on stage for a bit here today. Was there something you wanted to add? Because I see your mic's open. I'll mute your mic in the meantime. And let's do round robin. If you have something to add, Liz, you got your mic open. Something to add there?
I do. So there's some accusations against China in Africa. Their AI deployment on the continent. A lot of people are saying it poses risks to security and sovereignty. So, China is very heavily invested in Africa with a lot of initiatives that they've put in place, Belt Road and so forth, and also a lot of their companies really investing heavily on the continent. But it's been suggested that the CCP's aim in Africa is to promote a model of authoritarian governance, which relies heavily on surveillance technology. So Huawei, which I mentioned earlier, actually has, supplied a lot of their facial recognition software to a lot of governments on the continent. And last year, Uganda actually used. There were accusations that in 2018 they were spying on the African Union headquarters. And then, as well as last year, the Ugandan government used their Huawei's facial recognition system to identify and arrest almost 1,000 suspected supporters of the opposition. So there's a lot of hoo-ha right now going on with just what China is doing on the continent, especially with their AI deployment.
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing, never-ending, day-by-day thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a surprise
Yeah.
at all.
So, but every little piece of the puzzle develops a bigger picture. Each little headline, gets woven into the quilt that eventually develops. It's a slowly developing Polaroid picture. But with each day, the picture gets more developed. So it's important to keep updated on these things on a daily basis, and that's why we love having you here to help us do that. And by the way, Liz, was it you who DM'd me about the African Investor event?
Yes, it was me,
Fantastic.
Tyler.
Lovely.
Yes, I will. I will send you a couple of decks that I received already, and some investor profiles to your email. So yeah.
Yeah, and so
we did some. Liz and I did some PR at the Good Morning Africa room.
I was there for the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cheryl, you're always there for the music, but yeah, I did receive an overwhelming number of decks, which is typical in my space. But yeah, after Cal's plugin, I got a lot in my DMs. So I'm gonna sift through them and then send you a couple that I think are good.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. And just to promote it real briefly, I think it's hopefully will be the best event, one of the most important events I've done. I'm very optimistic because each month now for 8 years, I've been doing a monthly event that connects real investors with real entrepreneurs. And statistically, we have 3 startups pitch, and statistically, over 8 years, one of them gets funded each month as a result of the pitch. So it has an incredible track record, and as every Swede in the audience knows, and in fact, most people in Scandinavia know, which you can see in my bio. But now that we're in Clubhouse, I started bringing these events in Clubhouse. And last month we did it around Asian investors with Asian entrepreneurs. We had 2 pitches, 5 investors from around Asia. One of the 2 pitches, due to Faraz, thankfully, is in the due diligence process to do the investment. And I'm very optimistic that we can do this, and looking forward to learn and observe how this will. When we do this in the African context with African investors and African startups. So that event is already in the Tech News schedule agenda, which you can find by clicking on the title of this room, where you'll see the Tech News page, and you can scroll through with your finger through the different events that are in our calendar. And there's several now. There's, I think, one tomorrow around crypto and crypto news. And we have all kinds of events under the Tech News Club, in addition to Tech News Around the World, where we meet twice a day. So do look through those, and you'll see the one that says Tech News Around the World plus Tech Meetup. And that Tech Meetup, I should have put Africa Tech Meetup, but it would be confusing because it's the Stockholm Tech Meetup is the real event focused on Africa, and there's just not enough text to put in the title of that room. So join that if you can. Yes, it looks like Brock, are you able?
Hey. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. 10-4.
I'm in Miami, in a place where I'd expect my connectivity would be fine, and for whatever reason, it has been horrible. So, how are you?
We'll bring it up with Mayor Suarez.
Yeah. Should be seeing him today.
What brings you to Miami today?
Well, I was speaking at Mar-a-Lago yesterday at the Wall Street conference. On the 4th, I had a number of things going on. Today, speaking at an entrepreneur organization or EO event. I spend a lot of time, I'm working with Mayor Suarez and state legislators, and I'm very active in Florida politics. Not as much as New York, but I'm active here.
I know that you played a substantial role in the Puerto Rico crypto community and kind of leading that effort to unify kind of a crypto utopia. I hope I mean that in the best possible way. Is there similar ambitions to do something like that in Miami, now that Miami seems to have its own ambitions about becoming a new alternative to Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I mean, Miami has been the biggest beneficiary in the U.S. of COVID. There's been a mass exodus out of New York, out of California. I'd make an argument that Miami is now the cultural, social, intellectual, financial, innovative capital of the U.S. right now. I mean, this is where the action is. I've been in New York once or twice a month for the last, call it 6 months. And every time I'm there, I'm like texting key people that I need to meet with. And they're always like, oh, I'm out of town. I come to Miami to sit down with Mayor Suarez the other day, and every single person I've been trying to reach in New York happens to be here. And so I'm over here once a month now.
Yeah. And then where is that? I imagine you're still as deeply engaged in the crypto community as you always have been. Is that still the case?
Yes, nothing has changed except I do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
At this point,
I'm
extremely active in philanthropic work. We've supported over 200 nonprofits in Puerto Rico, for example, but doing a lot of stuff throughout the United States and the world. I'm also very active in call it politics, legislation. I just do a lot more than that now.
And did your presidential bid come? Which was on the chicken and egg? Which came first? Your interest in politics, and that led to the presidential bid, or vice versa?
Well, I mean, it was an interest in politics, and then it's called, how do you want to go into politics? Slow and steady, wins the race is one way. I never do anything that way. I chose, obviously, the most dangerous and most expensive route, which is to step right into the ultimate ring of fire by running a presidential national campaign. There's no faster way to learn, though. It's called, you're right up in it, and in the most serious fashion imaginable.
What would you say are some of the key learnings from doing that?
Well, I mean, there's the basic mechanics of it all, right? Ballots, campaigning, and keep in mind, I ran as an independent, so I didn't step in with a platform of policy. I had to build a platform from scratch, right? I didn't have any infrastructure. I had to build infrastructure from scratch. I mean, there's a reason why we live in a two-party system, because if you decide, I don't like what's going on in the world, I want to try and do something about it, I'm going to go get involved, you eventually realize pretty quickly that it's kind of impossible to do that on your own, and then you have to join a political party for their infrastructure and platform. But the deal with the devil that you do is you kind of have to accept their policies, whether you believe in them or not. And then internally you can try to whittle away and make change. But I learned a lot about the mechanics. Obviously, you're forced to dig deep into really understanding your principles, what you stand for. And I'm also a big believer in unity. I feel like this country is polarized, and how do we find our way back to that middle? And obviously through everything we do in crypto and blockchain, if you're in that space beyond, call it, what is the price of Bitcoin, you eventually get into the deep sort of philosophical component of it, which is really all about governance, right, or government, and monetary policy. And so obviously that's something that I've been focused on for over a decade now, and that the rabbit hole of governance eventually leads you to the system that governs over us.
And how do you see this playing out or shaking out over the next couple of years with crypto in the U.S. or globally?
Well, I mean, I meet with members of Congress at least once a week. So I'm, at what's happening legislatively, both at a federal and state level. My argument and what I'm attempting to persuade our elected officials to do is, at a federal level, do as little as possible, and to allow the states to experiment with, 31 flavors of legislation, let them experiment, because if the federal government does something, it's likely going to become political, and when it becomes political, the lobbyists and the incumbents are most likely going to get their way, and America will lose as a result of it. This one's for all the marbles. I mean, one of the many things that I started is I co-founded a company called Tether, where we digitized the U.S. dollar back in 2014 as a way of proving to central banks that technology can be used to enhance their currency. That U.S. digital dollar we created is doing $150 billion a day in transactional volume. It's running at a $60 trillion a year run rate. We've got over 70 governments in the world now piloting projects. The Chinese government, with their Chinese digital yuan, is years ahead of everyone. And it could potentially be the cause of the U.S. dollar's reserve status in the world flipping rapidly, almost overnight, which would collapse the U.S. economy. And so we have to get this right. Janet Yellen and the Federal Reserve have stepped in, and they said, okay, we now get it. We're going to create a digital dollar. And if they get this wrong, it could be catastrophic for, all of us, all of our businesses and all of our institutions, which is why I show up. I don't want to be in politics. I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing this because I will. I will this as someone that sees what's happening, as someone that I at least believe understands what's happening, and I have a vision or a view as to how we navigate this very challenging road ahead of us. And so I show up to inform and to educate people in positions of authority to the best of my abilities, so that they can make good decisions that benefit the collective nation as a concerned citizen.
Yep. Brock, I want to say everything that you're saying, and the room we're in now has about 450 folks listening. And I've said, I consider you a friend from way back, even, in the earliest days of Bitcoin, where you gave me incredibly good advice to put in 1%. And I thank you for that. And everything you're saying right now fits completely with who I know you to be. And when sometimes people who haven't met you, haven't spent time with you, haven't had dinners with you, and their only exposure is what they've seen online, sometimes try to bring up very negative journal articles. And I imagine you encounter this from time to time. And I'm not good at defending other people. I'm curious, what do you say to folks who you encounter who, bring up this issue of people, the articles in the past where that you were essentially being defamed, etc.?
Yeah, so it doesn't really come up anymore because most people, at least I'm surrounded generally by semi-intelligent people that do a modicum of actual research before, talking about such things. But I'll answer it in this particular instance to make sure that these people are informed. I started a company when I was 16 years old. I got sued as a result of my participation in that business at 16, 17, and 18 by some other 17 and 18-year-olds, principally one who has been proven, who just got out of prison for committing fraud. It's kind of absurd. I was a 17-year-old sued for something by someone who's ultimately been gone to prison for committing fraud and knowingly and publicly in front of groups of people saying, I'm going to make up these things to get money. There's nothing there, and anyone that's ever done their research, my main investor when I was 25 was Goldman Sachs Principal Strategies, back when Goldman was the gold standard. So if someone wants to talk about a lawsuit which was principally against my co-founder by a 17-year-old when I was 17 years old, knock your socks off and probably go do a little bit more reading. The allegations have been proven false time and time again. Go read any recent news. It's pretty clear, but if someone wants to go there, by all means.
You don't run for president with that bullshit. Sorry, Brock.
Yep. Yeah, no, more importantly, if you're going to go run for president of the United States of America, if you're going to go put yourself potentially out there as a public servant pursuing the highest office in the world, you are opening up the door for anything and everything you've ever done in your life to be scrutinized under a magnifying glass. Yeah, it's called, you wouldn't do that. You're basically saying, I have nothing to hide. My closets are wide open, and I'm happy to answer anything. I've obviously done that. If you've if you've got a bunch of things in your life that you don't want to be publicly exposed, you don't run for the highest public office in the world. I mean, that I think kind of speaks for itself, which is another reason why this doesn't come up with anyone ever. By doing that, you've effectively cleansed yourself of anything. You've said, here you go, put it all out there. What do you got? Dig up anything you can on me, and I'm prepared and ready to answer it.
And the worst thing they could come up with is some bullshit allegations from somebody who actually seems to have been making bullshit allegations as a practice. So good for you, Brock. I consider me a wannabe friend of yours as well.
What?
Well, thank you for talking about Puerto Rico, and if ever anyone wants to come down, I'm happy to show you around.
One last question, bro. One last question from me. Tell me something about this last event that happened and with this governor situation, because there's been some things said by a gentleman here about the governor of Puerto Rico and how some talk around Bitcoin and investments being bought in from the tech circle. And Mr. Higgins, would you like to comment, sir, on what you were saying there?
All that I was saying is that there was an event held in
Greg, I'd
Puerto
like for
Rico.
you to. Greg, can please jump
Am
in.
I going to finish?
Greg, please. No. You won't finish. Greg, can you please jump in and say what he was saying? Can you please help me out here, brother?
Yeah, I mean, Justin can speak for himself, but I do think that there was a little bit of behind the words is this idea that Brock was not somebody that we should recommend. And there's a bit of groupthink that goes on. Even when you're not powerful, you can definitely band together with a group of people and say, hey, don't meet with this guy because of these allegations. And then the wrong thing happens. And so I am curious what Brock thinks about that, because when people drag around these allegations and they don't talk about the context surrounding them, it is very harmful to the right things happening. And I do think that that happened here in this room without the smoking gun. It's never with the smoking gun. That's never the political tactic. It's to mention the allegations and not mention the context is a tactic. And to say, oh yeah, we decided to recommend against meeting with this person and having the conversation that he wanted to have. And so I am curious, Faraz, does that actually answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
So can I speak for myself or what, Tyler? What are we doing here?
I'll chime in.
Please go ahead. Now
I'll chime in. As somebody who produces events, which Brock has kindly accepted speaker invitations from time to time, it's very common when politicians participate in conferences that they have a team who does due diligence on all of the speakers because they don't want to risk being on stage with anyone with extreme views of any kind. And they may or may not have extreme views, but if it's even perceived that they might, they'll just decide it's not worth the risk. So if Justin's team, then he works with somebody in government who was going to participate in an event,
but that's what
he could have decided.
Tyler,
they're not making a decision. They're not a jury deciding Brock is guilty or bad or good or whatever. They're just saying, we found some negative articles. It's not worth the risk of our politician participating in this event.
We need people to stop judging people in this way in order for
I agree. Greg,
as
an event producer, I of course would prefer that people just jump on stage and not worry about it. But that's politics in general.
It's
reality.
Yeah, it's
so
reality. I
I
spend my days trying to change reality.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But I don't fault politicians for their very careful stance on these things and taking the positions they do. I'm very familiar with that game, and there's no fault on. Nobody from Justin's team is making any accusations. They just made a decision that was in their best interest.
The only thing that I'm saying is I've been in a bunch of rooms where allegations have been bandied about without context. For example, that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. That there's a difference between a civil suit and a criminal suit.
I'll go one step further.
Let
me go one step further. I get a lot of heat for inviting some people that speak on my stage. I've even gotten heat when I invited Brock to speak at my events, and I get people DMing me, do you know this guy has this or this? And you know what I say to them?
I say, I got a message from I got a message from Justin a while back about Charles Johnson when Justin basically said, hey, Greg, be careful. This guy's a racist. And I'm like, this is what happens. It's a chilling effect of these things. Like, I don't know Charles well enough to know that he's a racist, and neither does Justin. And so I don't like this. I will stand against it every time. I don't like it when people try to cancel people by saying what they are inside their mind. I don't like what was done to Brock earlier in this room, and I will speak against it every time because I want to hear these people. And unless they are convicted of a heinous crime in a court of law, unless they are, unless there's smoking gun evidence, which by the way is what courts are for.
Yeah.
Talking about the allegations is harmful, and not allowing conversation with people who have allegations against them. Like, it's so easy to get allegations against you. If I ever try to run for office, people will make allegations against me. And by the way, I don't care but like Brock, I haven't done anything wrong. And I'm just going to, I will defend every time because the conversation gets more interesting when interesting people come in. And it gets less interesting when we harp on allegations and assume that we know the minds of others because of what they've been accused by other people. It's ridiculous. And by the way, it cuts across parties. This happens to Democrats. It happens to Republicans. I'm just tired of it. Like, let's stop talking about allegations. Yeah. I don't see what the
Greg,
point
can
is.
I just, for 1 second, Greg, Brock, you're still on stage here. I just wanted to make sure that before you go, you're here, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Did you want anything more?
I just want to thank him, and I want to thank him for demonstrating why I've taken the position that I have previously in saying what I said before he got here, which is you just saw the Brock that I know, and I hope it's taken at face value because it's completely consistent with the man I've known now since 2007 to be exact. So.
Well, and Brock, this is Greg Duffy, and you can consider me a supporter of you because I have no reason not to be. And on top of that, it seems like you have some really interesting ideas, which I'm happy that you came here to share with us.
I'll say this: we should all be so fired up to make the change in the world that we want to see. It was one of the most inspiring things you said here today, Brock, that you're taking matters into your own hands. And we should all feel a bit embarrassed that we're not as willing to do as you do. So on that point, I just want to thank you personally. And I wish you the best in your meeting with Mayor Suarez. That's a powerful combination. I feel that especially if there's an interesting connection there, I sense. So I hope the best for that meeting.
Yeah, if anyone is in Miami and you want to attend the event this evening, let me know. I'm here till Saturday, and we'll be doing some stuff tomorrow as well.
Thanks. I don't want to take up more of your time, Brock. I know you're a very busy dude, and a lot of I think a lot of the Bitcoin folks in Clubhouse owe you some thanks as well, because you've done a lot more for the whole ecosystem than nearly anyone I can think of, to be honest. So we'll move along. But again, thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Tyler, I just want to respond
go ahead, Justin.
to you.
The floor is yours. By the way, it's for this to work and not explode, so that we can move on to other topics. Let's give Justin an uninterrupted floor. So go ahead, Justin.
That's it. All that I want to see is say from my perspective what's happening here, right? I never made any value judgments on Brock. I was explaining behind the scenes actions that legitimately happened. And I wasn't inflating my role in anything. I wasn't doing anything except providing what I believed to be interesting content to your club, to the people in the audience, so that they can understand how government works a little bit better, and the inputs and outputs, and how government officials calculate things, and truly how decisions are made on everything from legislation down to who's going to attend or speak at a conference. In result of doing that, I made no value judgment on anybody, but just for explaining what happened in a factual manner, I have been attacked on your stage for quote unquote, overinflating my credentials, which has not been done with no evidence. So I've been attacked. I've been interrupted repeatedly, at least 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. When Brock got on stage, reminder, folks, all that I said is we saw these allegations and we prevented the governor from speaking. Words were then put in my mouth by two people on this stage.
You just said exactly what you said.
To the
member. Guys, uninterrupted 1 second, because it's not going to work otherwise. We're not going to get guests here.
No, you can't. Let him finish.
All to say.
No, you can't, Cassia, please. We don't get guests that come in. For the respect of the guests that we have, let's get closure on this, and we can have a debate
Correct.
after that.
This is all to say, like, normally I enjoy your club, Tyler. I enjoy your club call. I provide accurate information to the best of my ability. I don't inflate anything. But ultimately, what I'm feeling happening here is because maybe the information wasn't packaged in a way that people agreed with it, I was effectively being defamed and silenced. And I don't think that is fair. I think allegations were made with no proof, which is impossible to defend against. And the way that information works is it puts me and it just slanders my reputation with no way for me to clear it or clean it. Like I gave 2 names for examples that people can reach out to verify my credentials, but nobody's going to do that. Generally speaking, people don't give a shit. So they're just going to hear that X, Y, and Z may not be being truthful. And that is very frustrating for somebody that always tries to hedge and always tries to minimize things instead of inflate them. So I just wanted to say that and have a little bit of a space, because ultimately the effect that it will have on your club, the effect that it will have when people are in rooms where this is going on, is only one type of information will be presented, because people who have maybe a fuller context or a fuller view or a fuller understanding, they won't come in there and present information that may not be received well for a few reasons. Number one, they won't want to deal with the bullshit. And number two, they just won't see any value in it, because if information is being presented and it's literally just a restating of the facts without a value judgment, and they're getting their throats just ripped out for doing that, and it amounts to slander, why should they put up with that? So I just want to say that with this attitude, it is in effect a form of censoring people, and it reduces the quality of information that will be discussed in this club or any club moving forward. I'm Justin, and I'm done.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you,
Tyler, because I wasn't here. If anyone can send me those 2 names, I actually do check everyone's credentials.
Yep, we'll do.
Hey, this is from Heyman from Toronto, and I'd like to say that this forum, unlike the media or anything else, allows this kind of discussion, right? And for us to air out things. And Justin and Brock and Greg, I mean, if it wasn't for this kind of open, long forum, imagine like the stories that could develop from this if it was in the media, right? It'll be just small sound bites that go crazy. So I'm glad. Thank you very much for this forum, guys, to discuss this.
And I think we're at a place that we can
get into other
with respect
move on to other topics.
Brooke, yeah, we can get into other things. And of course, Mr. Brooke, I don't know you. A number of people here know you. I immensely respect you for coming on this stage and just taking what you get. And because you don't know really who was on here. So no, excuse me, 1 second, Cam, please. There's an etiquette to this, right? When we have guests, and I think we did all the right things. And Greg, thank you very much. And I think and everyone, thanks very much. Justin, a huge amount of respect for you. Faraz, huge amounts of respect for you, guys. You're some of the best guys out here. And Mr. Brooke, thank you very much for coming to our stick around. And Tyler is one of the most is the guy I respect one of the most in Clubhouse, and he's he's just such a great he made a great understanding of who you are, right? So thank you very much.
I'll make a closing point. You rarely hear me defending people. I'm very curiously inquisitive. I want to know the truth of the matter, and I don't generally make claims or statements unless I have some confidence in them. And if I don't have confidence, I'm very transparent about my lack of confidence in them. And that's why I'm glad to see Brock on stage, and I'm happy to reiterate that he's demonstrated exactly everything that I said before he arrived. That's the Brock that I know, and he's incredibly consistent, and he has been for years, and it is what it is. And I wish him the best. And he's, like I said, he's a doer. He's added incredible amounts of value to the crypto ecosystem. There's few people that are on his level, very few. And he's trying to make the world a better place. The U.S. is so screwed up politically at the moment. He ran as an independent, which is one of the most important things anyone could do in America right now, is to run as an independent to try and bring some civility to politics in America at this moment. I can't think of a better use of somebody's time, but nobody's got the what to do it. Honestly,
Cojones.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to do that, and Brock is doing that. So I mean, I again just want to call out, like, it is what it is. Walking the walk and talking the talk. I can sit here and try and say good things about Brock all day long, but I don't think I could say anything better than what he said himself about what he's doing in Miami at the moment, and what he's So anyway, it is.
Tyler,
Tyler,
you definitely made me change my opinion. I think it takes a lot for someone to come up stage and speak the way Brock did. I definitely because a lot of the information that we get sometimes is from third hand and second hand, and the culture we created is that we tend to not go deep to find out the context of things, right? Sometime the group thinking.
Amen.
When I worked in Wall Street, the same.
And Tyler and Cal, this is Greg. And so I basically, I wish Justin was here to hear this, because the only reason I'm being so hard on him is because I consider him a friend on the platform. And so this is your hardest on your friends. And I think he is great. I think he actually has a lot of good ideas. I like the forums that he runs, and I like his questioning style in many cases. This is a bad habit that I'm trying to get out of him.
Greg, can I?
Yeah,
no,
but I'm not going to
suggest
continue the debate. I'm not going to continue the debate.
And also
so
just
you're
get
right.
in touch with him.
But
just go
chat
with him.
Guys, I'm going to jump off for a call. Brock, thanks a lot for coming, man. I'll talk to you later. Guys, thanks a lot. God bless. Godspeed to you.
Him, but I will double down on that, Cal. But I actually just want to thank the two of you for the moderation, because I do think it's valid to moderate the way that you're doing. But in bringing this guy up here, Brock, who I've enjoyed listening to what he's saying, would not have happened if there was a chilling effect like some of the chilling effects that we were talking about. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brock.
All right, thank you, everyone. I've got to run to my next meeting, but appreciate you. Anytime you want to have me on, feel free to reach out. I live my life in service, and happy to show up, answer any questions. But hopefully, having conversations about the present and the future. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. So let's all get involved and co-create a future in which we all want to live.
One last question, Brock. Brock, are you going to run again in the next general election?
So let's just say that I am. The last run was an exploratory mission to understand the mechanics of the process. You'd have to be insane to subject yourself to the risks and the cost of running if it weren't part of a bigger ambition. And so I am doing everything necessary to be able to run in the future. I obviously can't tell you definitively if I do. There's a legal requirement that I actually formalize his campaign and all those sorts of things. So I'm call it preparing myself to always be ready, which means the political apparatus and machinery that I'm having to build an entire infrastructure on par with the Democratic and Republican parties. Let's just say this is the amount of work and strategy and cost to actually do such a thing is nobody's done it in our lifetimes.
Yeah, fair point. Fingers crossed. And
I just wanted to mention that I met Brock at the blockchain conference in Vegas, spent 6 hours with him, talk about politics, not blockchain.
Yeah.
And his vision of future is very genuine. And I think we should really focus on people's future, not past. I mean, in past, I'm 55 years old. I've done many things that I regret, but it's my future that should be matter to people in this room and in this society. And we can't work things out if we don't work together. Instead of, I think it's better to know that we are all in this together. It's not us versus them. It's only us. And I still thank Brock for when he was speaking at the conference in Santa Monica, he played the movie of Charlie Chaplin for 5 minutes. Great Dictator. I've played that movie for 500 times, and every time I remember everything that it said in that movie, it's us. So for that, I have to thank him, and let's focus on the future. Thanks. Sorry for interrupting.
That's right, Cam.
in the past.
Again, thank you, everyone. God bless. I've got to run, but happy to come back and join this stage and connect. This is us. It's up to us. And many hands makes work light. Teamwork makes this collective dream work. So keep dreaming, keep doing, and let's build a brighter future together. Amen.
I'm going to vote for
Thanks,
you. I'm
Brock.
voting
Thank you,
for you.
Brock.
Brock.
Okay, other headlines. We can circle back to that at another point if people have thoughts that they want to hold on to for now. We could keep it on the political front with this Trump new website and the Facebook Oversight Board decision to keep Trump off of Facebook, if somebody really wants to keep it political, and then Twitter just suspended another political account today, namely. It says Trump tries to get around Twitter ban and gets suspended again, is the headline from Yahoo News. A Twitter account reportedly created by the staff of former President Donald Trump has been suspended a day after its creation. The account was DJTD, or Donald Trump, DJT, meaning Donald J. Trump, desk. Was believed to have been established to post statements from Mr. Trump and broadcast updates on his new website. So essentially, they are mimicking and mirroring Trump's new website, which is donaldjtrump.com, where he has his own Twitter-like feed, which he calls his desk, and where he's making tweet-like bits of content. And so essentially, apparently his staff made a new Twitter account to mirror the content he's posting on his website, and Twitter has now banned that new account that's mirroring the content on his website. So there's still both Facebook and Twitter both basically reaffirming their positions of keeping Mr. Trump off of their platforms. Although the Oversight Board did encourage Facebook to circle back 6 months later to review the scenario. But I want to flash mics and see if somebody's got a non-political point to raise here, as we often do get into non-political things here from time to time. We often cover even tech things here, believe it or not, from time to time, that have nothing to do with politics at all. So if anyone's got something like that, Liz, go ahead.
No, I was clapping my hands. I was laughing.
Okay,
at
go
that
ahead.
comment.
Anyone with some regular old plain boring tech news? Yeah?
Tech news from Mexico.
Okay, Elisa.
Tyler.
Go for it.
Well, good news. Bitso, which has a Mexican and a Brazil founder, just became a unicorn.
Oh, you got a Mexican unicorn. How do you say unicorn in Mexican? In Spanish, by the way.
Unicornio, we're very
Unicorno.
happy. Unicornio.
Okay.
So I think more plain than that, I cannot imagine, guys. Thank you so much.
Con ñ, yeah? Unicornio?
Unicornio.
I love it.
Which is almost the same,
but
right?
I like the accent on the N, yeah.
I'm very happy in the sense that the entire ecosystem in Mexico is celebrating. It's not like saying they got it, we're still not there, but the entire ecosystem is very happy that we have something like that. And as I have said before, we have to do it ourselves in Mexico and Latin America. Bye bye.
Again, I see Tiger Global.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
These guys are aggressive, man.
They're everywhere.
Okay, so you're taking my happiness away.
No,
please, guys.
not at all.
No. The investor, Tiger Global.
Tiger Global is it's amazing the amount of investment they're doing internationally. Yeah.
It's fantastic, guys. And I think we're a global place, a global marketplace.
Mexico is, just for those who don't know, it plays a very important role in America's as America's leading trading partner now. So it's I think Mexico has an incredibly bright future, to be honest. And I'll even go so far as to say it would be one of the places I would consider investing in and living in, honestly, where I did live near Playa del Carmen for 6-7 months and loved every minute of it. And it would be very high on my very short list of places to live with the expectation of the amount of growth that is expected there over the next decade or two. So I think Mexico has a very bright future. And I lived on the border in San Diego most of my life, so I'm quite familiar with Mexico with many years. But I think the future has never been brighter than it is right now. So, and it pleases me much to say that. Welcome, Dan. Dan, as almost always, has a headline to jump into, and so does Leon. And Leon, we're going to invite you on stage with the rare exception that we're trying to cool down the political conversations at the moment. But if you have something technical to share, that would be fantastic. But what do you got? It's in your bio. What's your photo say here?
If you don't like this one, I can switch. I'm searching for another one. This is a little bit political, not too much, but I think it's actually okay. So sorry, let me see. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken just warned the West investor do not put their money in China. Just like waggle his fingers. You guys should be very, very careful about your money in China.
Well,
people ask why. He said, I cannot tell you, but just be very, very careful about your money.
And who was it? The Secretary of State, Anthony.
Yeah.
Blinken. Interesting. Wow, that's heavy. I had not seen this.
Just 2 hours ago. It's fresh.
You definitely don't want the Secretary of State to have the last name Blinken, because Blinken is the last thing that you want to do in a negotiation with China.
I know. He blinked, right? I know. I mean, he didn't do a good job. I was a little pissed off. He should have been a little bit harder.
He must have had a really long night. He must have had a really long night to make a slip up like that. Anthony Blinken, you're a disgrace.
Anyway, so this is what he did. I don't know. I read the whole thing. It's a really short piece. I didn't see any like a real stick. It's just like a cling. I may have some stick, right? So I don't know how well this is gonna work.
Yeah, no, but
anyway,
it's a very important headline, and it's part of the ongoing daily drama that's still unfolding and will for weeks and months to come, no doubt. So it's just one more piece.
I sent you a headline, Tyler.
Let me check it. We got G. Duffy sent the link. Go ahead. I see it. Emails reveal. Yeah, this is a super interesting one, actually, about Netflix and Apple.
Yeah. So basically, in this Epic the Apple thing, emails have started being. This is Apple's worst nightmare, by the way, because they have to fight this fight, but discovery is terrible because it reveals all this internal communication, and now I can talk about it because it's out there. Like, I know this stuff cold, but I have to just talk about what you're seeing in the emails here. I have to be very careful. But like Pete Distad and Peter Stern are both pretty good. I know them very, very well. And basically what these emails are about is them trying to convince Netflix not to drop in-app purchase support or even test doing it to see how it would go. And the stated reason is customer experience. But what you see is an email where Peter Stern says, Eddie, we have to imagine he means Eddie Q, has asked that before we agree to the A/B test, he wants to meet with Reed. I've let Eddie know how they feel, but he rightly points out that if we can't get it done, then we have less to lose. And so this is a very interesting thing, because what happens in the meeting between Eddie and Reed is not in the emails. But I guarantee you there's a lot of pressure here. And if you're a small company, you have no hope of getting Apple to do what they did for Netflix, which is to make a whole presentation for them using their army of VPs and developers and marketing people and all this stuff to convince you to stay on in-app purchase. You just got to stay on in-app purchase, because if you don't, you'll get kicked out of the App Store. So I found this very interesting, and it's the tip of the iceberg of what we could see from the discovery happening that is taking private business emails and putting them out in the public. And honestly, the best thing that you can do is read between the lines, because Peter is a really smart guy. He used to be an executive at Time Warner Cable, and then he came into Apple. He's one of the smartest business people I know. He's cutthroat and he's crafty. And so he knows how to write an email knowing that it could one day be discovered. Like people go to classes on this stuff about what you should or shouldn't write in emails now. And so what's not being said is almost just as important as what is being said. So read it, and I'd love to talk about it more. That's my overall overview.
I think everyone is that's been in tech for more than a minute now understands this dynamic of any exchange via SMS or text. You assume it will be publicly leaked at some point.
But the interesting dynamic is that you can't totally get away from it because you have to use email and text. You can't make everything an in-person discussion. You've got to do this kind of coordination, quick email kind of stuff. And so, and people fall in and out of being good at hiding at hiding the things that shouldn't go into email. And so if you have a huge like basically Apple's attorneys must be working night and day right now to limit the scope of the discovery, because people slip up all the time. So that's right, Tyler? You can't be perfect at this because you have to get things done at the same time that you don't want to say things that will help a lawsuit in your email.
And part of the problem is it slows down the email process when you're constantly have to second read every message before hitting send under the lens of a journalist. So it's
exactly.
It's part of the game at the moment. I know I said we didn't want to get political, but CNN just put up a really interesting headline that Greg might be interested in, where it says Biden team may partner with private firms to monitor extremist chatter online. And actually, Charles, of all people, would love this one. And the essence of this is that the Biden administration is considering using outside firms to track extremist chatter by Americans online, an effort that would expand the government's ability to gather intelligence but could draw criticism over surveillance of U.S. citizens. The Department of Homeland Security is limited in how it can monitor citizens online without justification and is banned from activities like assuming false identities to gain access to private messaging apps used by extremist groups such as you pick your favorite extremist group. Instead, federal authorities can only browse through unprotected information on social media sites like Twitter and Facebook and other open online platforms. And so, as such, they're now going to outsource it. And as the headline says, Biden team may partner with private firms to monitor extremist chatter online because those private firms are not held to the same scrutiny and standards as public firms.
Are they U.S.-based private firms, or is this just an extension of Five Eyes?
I doubt they are. I imagine they'll use whatever is most convenient, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. We could hope Russian.
Well.
Yeah, Russian or Israeli firms, I think, would be very good at this.
Israelis would probably be the best at it, honestly. Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Well, how interesting.
Yeah. Probably it's time to consider Singapore, right? Yeah. Why not, right? They're pretty good. They hate Chinese as well, so Singapore, it's easier.
Why not Singapore? There's a historically long discussion.
Okay, I just want to get some business for you guys.
There's a historically long debate regarding this on Reddit. You can find it there. And they are throwing things in all directions. Most of them biased.
On that article, yeah. No doubt. Here's an on the creator economy. There's a really interesting article from the New York Times that broke today, written by Taylor Lorenz. And for those who don't know Taylor is the young, hip tech journalist now at the New York Times who covers all things social media and is not much liked by many of the social media people in Silicon Valley.
We should get her and Justin together. We should get her and Justin
Taylor's
together.
A very inflammatory figure in Silicon Valley. There's people who she's much loathed and much loved, depending on which side where your values are on to some degree. But she covers social media for the New York Times, and in her recent piece that just came out, she talks about Mr. Beast on YouTube, who's arguably the most important person on YouTube at the moment. Has the 91 million subscribers across his 4 or 5 accounts. He's making in the neighborhood of about $3 million. What did they calculated? Somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million a week. And the point of it is, now that we're on the verge of this creator economy, he, no surprise, is branching far beyond YouTube, which has been sort of his home until relatively recently, but now he's getting into other things like a burger franchise that he launched and other such interests. But Taylor does go in to interview former staff members who anonymously say some unsavory things about him. And so the YouTube community feels that Taylor is intentionally trying to make a hit piece against Mr. Beast, which, yeah, you can read it for yourself and see if you think she's intentionally creating a hit piece, which this is not the first time she's been accused of doing something like that. And but it does speak to the arrival.
Yeah. You got to dig back into the history of a child, I guess, in order to crucify them. And I guess what I would say is, like, as more and more things get online, the more and more that this is gonna be not a good strategy. So that gives me hope. I don't have to fight Taylor because she's becoming less and less relevant every single day, as is the New York Times. And that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, like, if we could access all the private conversations of every person, we could find something to crucify every single one of us. My Stacy told me one time that in a group of female therapists who shall remain nameless, they were actually doing locker room talk, more locker room talk than I ever engaged in myself personally, actually. And these were the same people that would go out and message that this was such a terrible thing and men do it and all that kind of stuff. Look, we all do it. Let's be nicer to people and let them make mistakes, especially when they're children, but even when they're adults. Like, people say things that they later don't agree with, and they grow as people. There's certainly things that we should not allow, but they're basically things that people get convicted for, please. And other than that, if they haven't been convicted for it, or even if they have been convicted for it, let's put it in context and make sure that if they stole from a store and became a convict, and then they later reformed themselves and started helping people and being a good member of society, let's raise the bar. I just skimmed this article, and it went straight from how this kid seems to be doing something pretty amazing to how he used bad words when he was younger, and that maybe we should keep that in context. And this is exactly the type of stuff I'm talking about. It doesn't directly say, hey, fuck this guy. What it says is, you need to know. And I don't think you need to know this, because I think people aren't responsible with this information today.
There is a pattern, to your point, Greg, which is journalists, it's the same way they're covering Mr. Beast is very similar to how they covered tech companies, to the ire of tech investors, which is a sort of nitpicky. He used a somewhat offensive word when he was 18 and calling into question, just stirring the pot as it is, which in Thai society, if you did that.
And they hate it when you turn it back on them.
Somebody mentioned she went to a Swiss boarding school and all shit breaks loose. Yeah. So, fair point. So on this point of YouTubing, a YouTuber in, where was it? The Netherlands, I believe. A Dutch YouTuber named AirTag Alex put some of these new Apple AirTag tracking devices in the mail and made a YouTube video about it to just test the abilities of the new Apple AirTags, and the results were they work. So the Apple AirTags that he put in the mail, he has a really interesting YouTube video where he puts one in a letterbox and he tracks the progress of it. It's quite an interesting little video. In any case, it worked essentially with only a few minor hiccups. This little experiment showed that AirTag tracking is quite useful, and stuff you put in the mail can go on quite a long journey, even if the thing you're sending isn't supposed to go that far. Is the synopsis of that article. So with this, as we get close to the top of the hour here, I want to circle back and make sure everyone had their moment to chime in. So do jump in.
I have one.
Ladies first. Go ahead.
I have one.
Oh, so this actually might interest Greg. Where am I? Sorry. An article came out today saying that no matter how many trees we plant, we're never going. Planting trees can no longer save the planet. And so it immediately reminded me of that company Prometheus Fuels that you talk about, Greg, and how they're mining the CO2 out of the air to create jet fuel and gasoline, and how that may start to become something that we need to really start focusing on. Any innovation that starts to help us change the way we think about the environment and any changes to what we're looking at.
Yeah, Prometheus Fuels is a great example where they literally take atmospheric pressure, air from the atmosphere, not from a coal plant or something like that, and they create hydrocarbons in a low pressure process at prices that are actually competitive with fuel prices today, which is very important. Because the carbon becomes a mineable resource and they don't have to pay anybody for the carbon because it turns out that people don't want it in the air, at least at 500 ppm or whatever it is right now. But there's others too. So weatherizing minerals and burying them, which is like that is like a perfect place for a carbon credit. It's not really like the nice thing about Prometheus Fuels and some of the people making concrete out of atmospheric carbon and building materials and plastics is that it actually contributes to the cost of goods reduction because they get the carbon for free. And so free things like CO2 are suddenly useful, even at low concentrations where you have to spend a good bit of technical know-how and resources to extract them. It turns out that it's reached a level that it makes me feel really good about climate change because it's now reached a level where people can make money by taking free carbon out of the atmosphere, which means we're all going to be okay, guys. Yeah, we're all going to be okay.
Yeah, if anybody wants to read more about this, it was a Tech Insider article that came out about 13 hours ago, and I just retweeted it on my Twitter account, so you can find that on my bio.
Yeah.
So there may be appropriate time for me
continue
to
grow
jump
trees.
Go ahead, Dan. What's your take on this?
Yeah. But first of all, I think it's great, and I've been actually an advocate for e-fuels for a while now, and I do think that eventually, maybe not that long, as renewable prices come down, that the cost of e-fuels, once it breaks that barrier and gets cheaper than fossil fuels, then the world changes, and that's fantastic. But we shouldn't lose track that even with these technical breakthroughs that are happening and with renewables and everything, we're still not even close to being on track for addressing climate change in an appropriate way. And then that leads me to my story here, which is from Reuters this morning. They did a survey of what people's top issues are, and the economy is number one at 18%, then public health, healthcare, immigration, crime, inequality, morality, education, and then the environment comes in at 4%. And as long as environment's at 4%, we're not going to end up with the policies that we need to really move the entire world. So having these, breakthroughs like e-fuels, these are great. Solar energy being so cheap, fantastic. But we actually will not address the problem in a substantial way unless there's pretty straightforward policies, by the way,
solar
to get everyone
actually,
working in the same direction.
Dan, I have good news for you, which is that you're right at this very moment. But the graphs that I have seen about actually putting CO2 to economic use as a free resource in things that we use are actually showing that this is enough to turn the tide of climate change. And this is the thing that people don't understand about disruption, is that when it happens fast and it changes all the variables. And so right now I agree with you, but this actually putting CO2 to use in products where it's used as a free part of the bill of materials, I think is going to eclipse all solar development. Actually, solar is somewhat negative if you look at the long-term implications of recycling solar panels and things like that. But anyway, without getting into that whole rat hole, what you're going to see is that these technologies, especially because Prometheus Fuels and others, Prometheus Fuels has a filter that they've been developing for the better part of the past decade or two that lowers the cost of the Fischer-Tropsch process down to being competitive with pulling fossil fuels and oil out of the ground. And I know you, and I know that you actually, if you think about it, you'll understand the implications of that are so big that alone, not to mention the few other companies that are in that category that I'm either know or I'm trying to invest in, are enough to turn the tide. And I can show you the projections.
Well, I'd like to say, but I first of all totally support the area. I've been investing in it for over a decade. So yeah, so I totally support, and I totally agree that we need things that suck carbon out of the atmosphere, or we don't make it. I mean, I'll just say it as simply as that. But e-fuels alone, which are probably the number one thing you can think of in terms of scale. There's only a few things that are at really large scale for accessing carbon. One is concrete or cement, and that won the X Prize recently. We're two cement companies. And the other one is e-fuels. But of course, the problem with e-fuels is it doesn't actually lower carbon in the atmosphere at all. It's carbon neutral. So in other words, you take the carbon out of the atmosphere, you make it into fuel, and hopefully you do it cheaply and replace fossil fuels, and then you burn it and it goes back in the atmosphere right away.
Maybe,
So what it
but maybe
does is
not.
it stops the extraction of oil for fuel, which is fantastic. It's a huge amount, but we
Dan,
shouldn't
let me
lose
tell you
track
one
of
thing.
what the situation we're in.
One thing, because I agree with you. For the fuel example, it is carbon neutral. For some of the other examples that you listed, it's carbon negative. But I can make the fuel example carbon negative, and here's how. Not with breaking the laws of physics, I promise you. Here's how. It's called strategic reserve. And so if you can take some of that fuel and bury it and never use it, well, isn't that interesting? Because look, then it's in strategic reserve. And so I actually think we can make a huge dent by thinking about it like this. It's sequestration.
Okay, wait a second.
It's
If it's a
sequestration.
strategic reserve, that means you might burn it. The much cheaper
No,
way
no,
to
no.
do it is to capture it out.
You get to trade it off.
Underground.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like you can trade it off. You can keep it in reserve and basically never use it. It's kind of like nuclear warheads. But yeah, no, it's
why not just capture it out of the air and put it back underground where it came from?
Well, because there's also
solution.
a use for fuel. Like for example, right now, electric planes are so far away, and so for jet fuel, this stuff is useful because planes have a weight problem that we haven't solved with modern battery technology. So the fuel is still useful. The fuel is still useful for extending the life of existing cars on the road, but you can actually make carbon neutral fuels carbon negative if you divert some of the fuel that you create with the same infrastructure investment to strategic reserve. And then you can trade dumping that carbon in the atmosphere against whether you can use other things to get that energy. It's I can get you in touch with people.
A great application for it is airplanes. I agree. The alternative to that is, again, to capture CO2 out of the atmosphere, which, by the way, people think is some future crazy technology. It works today. The only problem with it is there aren't policies in place to incentivize it because it's waste disposal. But for airplanes,
you and I are saying the same thing, though.
You can capture CO2, put it underground for about, at scale, $100 a ton. That's about $1 a gallon. So if your e-fuel costs the same as fossil fuels, great, go to do that. If it costs $2 or $3 a gallon more than regular fuel, well, then for $1 a gallon, you can get rid of all the CO2 also. And
yeah, I think it's about $3 a gallon, but then you have something that's fungible. It's about $3 a gallon, but then it's fungible and you can use it versus just dumping it. And so I think that it's going to be a combination of all of these things. But
I'm not disagreeing. I think it's fantastic, but it's not. But I disagree with you when you say it's a solution to climate change. It helps address. It stops
I actually
the
said
extraction
all
of fossil
of these
fuels
things together was a solution. But actually,
but e-fuels in particular, by the way, are not considered, by the way, a carbon negative. It's a carbon neutral technology, not a carbon negative one.
But that is the engineer's viewpoint and not the CEO geopoliticist viewpoint. You can make it carbon negative by policy that you do on top of it. What do we do with these fuels? It's an expensive form of sequestration if you put it into the ground. You just need to be able to pump it out later in case you need it, but plan on not doing that.
Well, okay. Well, I don't know. That's an interesting discussion in its own right. But I would say we need to do everything. And so we need carbon neutral fuels are way, way better than fossil fuels. Absolutely.
And they extend the life of existing cars on the road, Dan. Like versus creating the environmental cost of creating a brand new Tesla is so high that you might be better off with carbon neutral fuels in an old car while we let those things age out.
No, not even close, by the way.
No, we are. I've got the
No.
models
What you
for
just
that.
said about that is not true.
It is true.
Ongoing burden of
Elon would
fossil
say so.
fuels is very high.
Elon would say so. The
Oh, I'm
carbon
sorry.
neutral fuels,
If you had
carbon neutral fuels in an existing car are better for the environment than a new electric car.
Greg, I think Elon is busy trying to mine the space mining and bring helium back to the Earth. Then, we just
Carbon
do the
neutral
fusion.
fuels extending the life of an existing car on the road is
I'm
friendlier
sorry.
for the
I was
environment than creating a
misunderstanding what
new
you were
electric
saying.
car. Yeah.
That's better than what we're doing, for sure.
And it's better than
but there's
a
a
new
lot of
electric
energy
car.
that goes into making those fuels, by the way. And you have to make sure that you only
Yeah,
use
but
renewable
that's
energy
priced in
for the
Yeah.
recreation of the fuel.
Well, a lot of them are using things like pumped hydro and other and yes, solar but basically because electricity is the energy input to this process, it's fungible and you can put it on clean sources, and that is exactly what this company is doing. So yeah,
No,
I
think
do
it's
think
great what they're doing. By the way, don't get
you
me
got to
wrong.
look at the whole picture.
I'm just saying that people. Let me put it another way. There's already too much CO2 in the atmosphere. The last time it was this high, sea levels were 75 feet higher than they are today. So, and it was millions and millions of years ago. By the way, it's before humans walked the earth. So we're in a situation where these kinds of things where we just stop doing all the bad stuff we're doing.
Dan, I'm just saying
good,
that creating a new electric car is not carbon neutral. Creating a new electric car and all the charging infrastructure and all that is not carbon neutral. So another interesting way that carbon neutral fuels can actually be carbon negative is by reducing our reliance on producing these new electric cars at the rate that we would produce them at if we wanted to replace all of them by, say, 2030, which is what some governments are trying to foolishly do, versus investing in things that extend the life of the infrastructure.
But you have to get rid of combustion because not even if you burned hydrogen in your car, which sounds like a really, let's say green hydrogen, you're still creating nitrous oxides, which have really bad global warming impacts. And I just learned the other day from a climate scientist that we had on Clubhouse that they last for 100 years. And so it's really bad. So if you burn e-fuels in a combustion car, you're still going to create nitrous oxides that will be very high global warming potential.
What I can say is that I have seen you are correct, but I have actually seen this. You can only answer these questions not with spreadsheets and not with point-by-point rebuttals, but with simulation that includes the amount of global warming based on current models, based on the strategy that you're putting into the system. And I will say again that it is better for global warming and better for the environment, at least in terms of man-made, human-induced climate change, to keep the existing pumps, the existing fuel trucks, the existing cars, and et cetera on the road with carbon-neutral fuels created using clean energy sources. And by the way, that includes nuclear. It's better to do that than to try to go to this solar battery future as fast as we possibly can for every car on the road and everything that we can do. It's not as good. There are better, more practical options that get us to there faster that we aren't paying attention to because of cargo cult science. And that's my only point.
Let me just finish by saying I agree that e-fuels are a great thing, and primarily because they replace fossil fuels. And people have the idea that we can, whenever we finally get to cleaning up our emissions, that'll be okay. In other words, kind of like pollution. Once you finally fix the pollution, then things get better. That's not true of climate change. It's totally cumulative, and it totally matters when we do it, not just if we do it. And we're already so late. So anything like e-fuels that gets us off of fossil fuels, even a decade faster than would happen otherwise, is an incredibly important thing. And I do think they have a very important role to play, especially in things like aviation, like you said. But
yeah, I just want to point
we
human
still have
greed
a
at the
long
problem.
way to go. In addition to that,
the only thing more powerful than virtue signaling, Dan, is human greed. And so I want to point greed right at the problem of climate change, and free stuff that you can get from the atmosphere seems to be doing a big part of the job. And by the way, it's not just e-fuels, it's sequestration into concrete, like you said before, plastics, like all the things. Carbon, it turns
But
out,
all
is
of these
very, very
things only
useful.
are at gigaton scale. Remember, we're doing
Today,
50 gigatons a year.
today.
50 gigatons a year. Cement,
We're still building
which is
houses out of
huge, is like 3 or 4 or
out
5,
of
6
wood, which
gigatons.
is carbon. We're still building houses out of wood, which is carbon. We need to build it out of carbon that we pull from the atmosphere. And
sure,
so you're
great.
right. That's where we are. But we need to make
Greg, hang on a minute, mate.
Optimistic.
Greg,
we need to do this. We need to be optimistic.
Greg, if you build
anyway,
a house
I don't know
wood,
how if everyone's enjoying this, but I will say, and speaking
we need
of greed,
to be optimistic.
Speaking of greed, my suggestion, which would get everyone doing all of these things you're talking about and much more, is to put a price on carbon and start off small, but raise it every year so it gets really high fast, and then take 100% of the money and give it back to every citizen on an equal basis, and actually legal resident on an equal basis. And therefore, people have an incentive for having a high carbon price. That will make all of these things you're talking about that much more economical, and will make fossil fuels less economical quickly. And that
only if they price in the fact that if I buy carbon neutral fuel, are they still going to charge me for the carbon I put into the atmosphere? Like, this is I used to think your way. I used to think your way, and then I realized that the market was going to solve it for us. I think the market will solve this for us, and the government will mess it up because they'll miss all the subtleties. For example, solar panels have a huge carbon output in the construction of solar panels, and also they are extremely difficult to dispose of when they inevitably break. Their 25-year lifetimes that they put into these stupid Excel spreadsheets are bananas and don't actually work out. So I just want the market to solve this problem.
It doesn't.
It's already in the process.
It's already in the process of doing it.
That's why I said, hey, we're here. We're here. Be optimistic.
Well, but it's not CO2. Yes, there is a penalty about 10 to 20% on the lifetime output of solar. It goes to the manufacturing, the energy input to making the solar.
Well,
but of course,
they don't actually,
you can start to make those using totally renewable energy.
We need to get Mike Schellenberger in here.
Footprint will be very small.
We need to get Mike Schellenberger in here because he wrote the book on this topic.
Oh my God.
And actually, the other thing about solar is that basically no base load. And this causes us to go towards yes, it is a huge topic. Yes, we could talk about it for a while, but it's not as like when the government gets involved in this stuff, they go to cargo cult stuff and they don't go to science and engineering. And the market, if left unfettered, will find the price optimal point for this stuff. And by the way, the one thing that it doesn't do well is long-term disaster type stuff. But in this particular case, the disaster is a resource that people are finding ways to use profitably. And so I'm no longer scared. That doesn't mean we don't need to do anything, but this is happening.
You don't follow Michael Schellenberger, by the way. I debated him on the stage once. If you read the review of his book, it was like totally eviscerated. One of the quotes was, "What's new in his?" I won't be able to get it off the top of my head. But anyway, it's crap. That's all I can say. Okay, sorry to be so direct about it. But he's one of these techno-optimist guys. Again, I'm a techno-optimist. I'm a venture capitalist. I'm totally techno-optimist. But at the same time, we have to realize the situation we're in, which is very precarious.
Sometimes when you have a hard time formulating a specific argument against somebody like that, it's because they've created cognitive dissonance for you. And so I know it's tempting to go back.
Dissonance for a long time when you're in climate. You have to do that.
I know, but it's tempting to go back and restate your existing arguments. But I think Schellenberger is not. He certainly can't be right 100% of the time, but he certainly has some interesting points. So let's not drag him unless he's
a little bit along the lines of Bjorn Lomborg, who has similar arguments to Michael. And I think he's been rather discredited.
I think we've arrived at the
but now we understand where we're coming from, at least.
People can,
but again, totally support e-fuels. Think it's fantastic. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not even close to being enough, and it's carbon neutral, not carbon negative.
That is an assertion with no basis in fact, because I've got the models sitting here from the company that I'm talking to.
And not carbon negative, unless you put it underground, like you said.
That's not the only way that it can be carbon negative. It could be carbon negative. It could actually be. So what does carbon neutral mean? Like In reality, we're talking.
CO2 out of
No,
the atmosphere,
hang on. Look, we're comparing two strategies. We're comparing two possible universes. One world where we go to electrification as fast as possible, like the government seems to be pushing us towards with the Green New Deal and stuff like that. And the other one is where we do something like the strategy I'm talking about. And I'm talking about the strategy that I and many other people are supporting has less carbon in the atmosphere over time than the other one. So what does carbon neutral, carbon negative really mean in that universe? So maybe the fuels are carbon neutral, but the result is carbon negative compared to the other strategy.
Well, I don't even understand conceptually. If you do something that is carbon neutral, which I think you have to admit, e-fuels are carbon neutral.
You're foregoing the other options of creating more electric cars than you need to at the point in time, you're foregoing the battery production for grid stabilization. But beyond that, to energy storage, which is a terrible idea. Like storing energy in batteries for the electric grid, other than for voltage stabilization, is a terrible idea. Having a grid that relies on renewables like solar alone is a terrible idea. So I'm talking about the things we need to be talking about, like nuclear fission, like nuclear fusion, like e-fuels, and all that stuff is carbon negative compared to the strategy that we're executing right now.
This is the Schellenberger stuff. So
we got to introduce one other factor into this, which is not so much time, but the interests of the audience in general is not at all engaged in this conversation because
it's dwindling.
Precisely,
I can feel it.
Precisely as the
let's have a separate.
No, it's not that. I'm proposing it as a challenge because when you do a room around this, the challenge is to get people interested in it because it is interesting, and it's more than interesting, it's important. So how do we make an?
Hey, can you do a survey right now about whether people found this last 5 minutes or whatever?
I don't need to do a survey because I have a graph showing everyone leaving the room.
The fact of the matter is, give the people what they want. What they want me to do is call Dan
25% down.
Another voting. They want me to say Dan is a drunk and you shouldn't listen to him. He's shit-faced right now. He doesn't make any sense. And get him out of here because he's not even worth being in. I don't know what they want, but they want
nice,
stuff like
Greg. Be nice.
No, I am being nice.
I have groundbreaking Apple news that will keep all the audience.
We lost about 100.
That's right. Apple always works. Wow. Give them the Apple news.
Apple.
Yeah. We lost 100 dumbest people.
Tyler, let's find another way to
give them the Apple crack. Give them the Apple crack.
Yeah. We have a brand new Apple study about using Apple Night Shift, and it doesn't improve your sleep. Don't even bother.
Oh, interesting.
Correct.
Researchers at Birmingham Young University conducted a study to see how much the blue light reducing feature like Apple's Night Shift improved the sleep quality. Their conclusion:
You're better off just dimming your screen. You're better off just dimming your screen or getting the fuck away from
Interesting.
it. Like that stuff doesn't do shit. It might feel nice. It's like a nice placebo, but that's about it.
Placebos do help.
I sent the link to Tyler, so he can rebroadcast it. If you find it interesting.
Yep. Yeah, this placebo might actually be worse than an actual placebo. So maybe take a
Tyler, we missed the biggest
news.
Tyler, we missed the biggest news headline out of the US. The US birth rates fall 4%, the lowest ever. At this rate, we won't be able to, produce.
I see the headline now. Birth rates down due to everyone spending too much time on Clubhouse. Apparently, yep.
I'm working as fast as I can on this problem. I'm working as fast as I can.
Hey, to finish up, by the way, Greg, come over. Let's set up a separate room on Club to have a debate on this, on a whole room dedicated.
Yes.
To it, okay.
Make sure you start with a large number.
Yes. Start with a very large number.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have lower.
That's right. That's all right.
Than your club.
You know what the problem is that that Tyler and Cal are exactly right, because really this is about not just quality, but quality times quantity. And this shit is fucking boring. It's fucking boring. And I actually hate talking about it, but I also hate people being wrong on the internet, and I can't help myself. So I apologize, audience. I have wasted your time. We should be talking about, I don't know, like go get China. Leon and
No,
I
it's not
fight.
that.
Like,
It's how to make
whatever.
the important conversations
how
more
to make it
palatable.
compelling for
How
because
to make it interesting.
you guys are
yeah.
I have learned so much from what you were just discussing there. So it's not
I should probably say, Cal, fuck solar.
Yeah.
Fuck it right in its stupid asshole. And then maybe we could start off.
Could you say the same
and
about
some other
windmills?
exclusive for nuclear from somebody? I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah, the only thing that blows more hot air than windmills is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who doesn't have a shred of engineering capability.
I don't want to have to ping her in here and have her do an interview. Hold on. We're gonna wrap here before the whole room explodes.
She otherwise seems to be a perfectly nice human